down in southern Afghanistan. It was a long infill, good route. We got in there and we get on target. The target itself wasn't so amazing. And then it just erupted around us. Fire coming in from 3 different directions, AC-130 going hot, very, very close. We're up in the air and we're seeing tracer fire just come up from all these different compounds. And I'm watching and I couldn't tell if the tracer fire was ripping through the helo behind us or not. I just remember, praying and then just watching the door gunners just hammering, with their miniguns into all those compounds.
Welcome to Mic Drop, the podcast where relevancy is irrelevant and we don't give a shit about your feelings. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, it's both an honor and a pleasure to welcome my next guest to the podcast. He spent 20 years on active duty as a U.S. Navy SEAL. He did 10 deployments at the infamous development group. He earned a Silver Star there as well as 2 Bronze Stars. And he's now currently the owner of AMTAC Shooting and AMTAC Blades, which we will get heavy into later on. He uses pepper spray to season his meat, and Grizzly Adams bugs out to his fucking place. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stage, Bill Rapier.
Mike, thanks for having me on.
Yeah. How is seasoning your meat with pepper spray? How does that work?
I think it's a little spicy.
Yeah, you like it spicy. So I recently came across a hot sauce brand that while I, didn't used to really be a hot sauce guy, as I've gotten older, I've gotten more into having them and enjoying them. But I don't like just that traditional, it's just hot sauce that a lot of kind of the big traditional brands are that are on every table out there. Heartbeat Hot Sauce it's a small kind of boutique brand up in Canada of all places that makes a bunch of different hot sauces that like flavor profile wise fit with a lot of different things. I mean, whether it's eggs scrambled or fried in the morning, or even like chicken or fish or beef, kind of some of the non-traditional foods that you would normally eat that I eat a lot of, and in the interest of trying to eat things that are cleaner, more grass-fed, and frankly just not quite as flavorful as some of the other stuff, I've kind of turned to hot sauces to amp it up a little bit. And this brand I've really taken a liking to. What I like primarily about them is they don't use any thickening agents or water like most hot sauces do. It's all natural ingredients with no preservatives. It's all locally grown stuff in all of their sauces. They ferment the peppers for, I think, 45 days before being aged. Or before made, for that maximum flavor. So it really kind of enhances it. And they're just really balanced. One of the kind of unique things about them too, if you saw the weigh-in between Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier, Dustin handed Conor a bottle of hot sauce, and it's his version or blend of hot sauce from this company, Heartbeat Hot Sauce. So they've got a bunch of really good flavors, again, that I put on a lot of different things and really, really like their product and reached out to them in terms of partnering with the show because it's one of those products that I believe in, just like all of our other sponsors. So if you dig hot sauce, whether it's pineapple flavored or traditional habanero, or Dustin's Louisiana style, they kind of have a flavor for everybody. So really good stuff, awesome company, great dude behind the company, and just a really cool experience in working with those guys. So go check them out. They do have a promo code. It's just Mic Drop, all caps, 2 words, for any listeners to get 20% off all of their sauces, and that's good for 6 months. So again, Mic Drop, 2 words, all caps, 20% off, and that's good for a full 6 months. So you go check them out. I'd like to take a quick second to shout out and thank our sponsor for today's podcast, Origin Labs and Jocko Fuel. Jocko Fuel is a great product. He's got a ton of products actually within the Jocko Fuel line. The guests and I enjoy them on the show. And outside, I take a lot of the supplements. I've got some of the Origin Lab jeans, boots, gis, and it's just all around American industry. They do a fantastic job really re-revolutionizing American industry from start to finish. It's all American made, all American sourced. Everything start to finish is made right there in-house, and they really do a phenomenal job creating the products and fulfilling the whole ball of wax. They've been a huge supporter of the Mic Drop podcast for a while now, and I really can't thank Jocko Fuel and Origin Labs enough for the job that they do for us, and so thank you to you guys. I'd like to take a second to shout out our newest sponsor, which is Project Warpath. This is a Navy SEAL-owned company that provides apparel with a pretty edgy feel, and it's a good friend of mine that runs it out of California, and just overall a great outfit. They've got a whole line of different shirts, one of which is arguably my favorite, which is Epstein Didn't Kill Himself. Wonder where that one came from. And but yeah, there's Hillary Clinton killed my friends. There's a bunch of pretty edgy and cool patriotic sayings on T-shirts with good design, good high quality, and it's one that I'm actually wearing right now. So I appreciate them sponsoring the show. Again, that's Project Warpath. You can get all their stuff online, and you know, the shipping and customer service is top notch, quality product, and you're supporting a veteran-owned business. So shout out to Project Warpath. Go check their stuff out. I'd also like to say thank you to our other sponsor, Resilience Premium CBD. Resilience is excited to offer all Mic Drop listeners a 20% off discount on all products for 2 weeks from when this podcast is live using the discount code MICDROP at checkout. That's 2 words, MICDROP at checkout. I'd also like to say that Resilience is a great company that works in conjunction with Trico CBD, and all military veterans and first responders receive 35% off. Yes, that's 35% off for all military veterans and first responders, and that's through the Military and First Responders program. You just have to sign up at resilientcbd.com/military first responders discount. In terms of about Resilience, generally speaking, it's a premium CBD that I use. Again, it works in conjunction with the Tricos brand for the everyday athlete. That's www.resilientcbd.com. And Resilience was really born with the founders who are military veterans as well, personally experienced the effects and impact that CBD had on their own mental and physical obstacles. Their focus was sharper, mental stress was calmed, fitness stamina increased, and their bodies felt less pain, inflammation after super intense workouts. A lot of times most people and people are able to either wean off entirely or significantly reduce pain management therapy. This is a shared vision among the founders that this incredible supplement had not only changed their lives, but had the power to provide unbelievable benefits to family, friends, athletes, fellow veterans, and ultimately the entire fitness community. So big shout out to Resilience for their product as well as the Trico stuff. We sure appreciate their support. How often do you floss? Are you a flosser?
Sometimes.
Sometimes, but not an every day?
Not every day.
Do you eat a lot of meat?
I do.
Yeah. You might want to think about that. When was the last time you got in a no-shit fist fight?
Man, 18 Delta.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that long ago?
Yeah.
No shit.
Yeah, long time ago.
Seems like kind of a waste of your skills.
I think the more dangerous you are, the
less you fight.
Well, the more incumbent it is to recognize, especially as men, that's fist fights a lot of times lead to people getting stabbed or shot.
Yeah.
And so I think it is the more you're carrying tools at all times. It's probably not just going to be a fist fight.
Yeah. No, I gotcha. It's a good way to think for sure. I know. I mean, all jokes aside, like it's been a long fucking time for me too, and there's been plenty of times where the opportunity presented itself and I was just like, dude, this isn't worth it. Like you never know what's going to happen. And to me, like if I'm forced to do it, then the gloves are coming off and it's no holds barred, fucking do whatever it takes and make it as lopsided as possible and as unfair as possible. But I'm similarly like I'll avoid it at all costs if I can. But
yeah, I mean, 100%. If you think about it in terms of if someone says something inappropriate to your missus,
yeah,
and you're like, okay, well, I'm gonna show him like this cannot stand, and you say some words, and then maybe you're like, I'm just gonna give him a little shove, and then I'm gonna leave.
Yeah.
And he gives you a shove, or you give him a shove, and then He changes levels on you. He does a nice double leg, goes knee on stomach, and he's crushing you. And your head's bouncing off the concrete. Like at that point, it's no longer a fist fight.
Yeah.
And now if you shoot or cut him off of you, like you started this. You have to remember, like he said words to you.
Yeah.
And the first time you touched him, that was assault right there.
Yeah.
So it's super important to think through, okay, what am I willing to do and where could this potentially lead? And think about that beforehand, not when you're seeing red because this guy is saying some stupid stuff. Think about it first and go, okay, how is my family better off if I, defend my wife's honor and kill this dude and now I'm in jail for the next 20 years? Like is my family, who's taking care of my kids?
Yeah.
Who's putting food on the table? Like all those things are very, stuff that we try and think through so that we can just be like, okay, check, like I'll lose this battle right now, like this verbal battle that we're in, I'll lose it in order to win the war. Because the important thing is me taking care of the family.
Have you ever encountered that where somebody's running their mouth or being disrespectful to the point where you had to think your way through that?
No. But honestly, like I don't, like purposefully, I don't go to bars.
Yeah.
Like I don't drink. I don't, if I do go out, the once a month or less, depending on babysitter availability that I go out with my wife, it's like, we don't go to places that are in any way like that. They're very low key places.
Yeah, no, I'm tracking. It's good. That's good shit. I mean, honestly, like we joke a lot on shows, and I have a lot of guests on here that have done some pretty amazing things in their operational careers. Yourself, 100% absolutely included. And I think a lot of times people think or have the misconception that you or even me or a lot of the guests that come on the show, run around and get in fights all the fucking time and whatever. And I think it is good to not only talk about it, but explain your thought process through that. And I think it's very sound. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
What is your favorite Christmas tradition?
We do a Christmas Eve service.
Yeah.
Every year. I enjoy doing that. It's a cool, everyone from our church and a lot of people, some people that don't normally come will show up and
and you bust their balls for being a fair weather fan.
And we'll do Silent Night at the end of the service by candlelight. Yeah, and that's a pretty cool. Yeah, it's a cool tradition.
Yeah, that's fun. That's funny. We did the same stuff. I grew up Lutheran in Northern Iowa, and we went to this really big church that did a midnight mass, and so we would all get dressed up and have a later dinner, and then go to church. And same kind of thing. It was all by candlelight and sang songs that you only sing one time a year really at church. And it was a pretty neat tradition for sure. Do you guys do anything Christmas Day, like big meals or anything that you do every year that kind of stand out?
We do, well, Christmas Eve, we do a thing called Bauernfrühstück, which is German for farmer's breakfast. Really? And it started as a tradition that we did when we lived in Germany when I was still a kid. And, there was lots of church stuff in Germany, like Christmas Eve, and then the first day of Christmas, second day of Christmas, third day of Christmas. And so my mom wanted something simple to do. And so she started doing that, and we've carried that on in our family. And so it's just we do like homemade noodles, the spätzle noodles, and then scrambled eggs and bacon and hash browns, all that stuff just gets mixed in. And so that's our Easter, or sorry, Christmas Eve meal. Yeah. And then a lot of times we'll have the leftovers that Christmas morning, and then we'll do a big meal, either Thanksgiving style or like some sort of roast, beef roast or something like that.
What's the name of the Christmas breakfast again?
Bauernfrühstück.
When the first time you said it, you sounded like Dwight from The Office. Okay. You watch The Office at all? You don't, do you?
I've watched the what was it, the movie that was based on, right? What was the
Office Space?
Yeah.
No.
That's not okay.
No, you're a little out of the loop on that one. That's all right.
We don't have a TV, so
no shit. We'll get into that for sure. What is your morning routine? A typical morning when you're at home?
When I'm at home, I'll get up at 5:30. Get the fire going. If it's cold, that's our only source of heat. So get the fire going. We're off grid. I'll go out, generally start the generator, get that going so I can fire up the espresso machine and make a cup of coffee. By then actually during coffee making is when I do my morning dry fire ritual. So I'll do a minute or 2 or 3 of dry firing and draws and stuff like that. Then I'll load up my pistol, finish making my coffee, and then sit and kind of depends. Sometimes I'll do some emails first. Sometimes I'll read my Bible first, and then when the wife gets up, we try and have like a, our time. We'll read the Bible together, do a little praying, and then we'll talk through, okay, what do we have going on today and the rest of the week? And kind of and that's been a really good, I wish I could say I've been doing that the whole time I've been married, but that was like maybe 2 or 3 years ago, we got delivered about, hey, let's every morning, let's read the word and pray together and actually have our morning meeting. And that's been a super helpful thing for our marriage.
Really? You notice night and day difference?
Good improvements. Yeah, because you kind of get on the same page. You have a little bit of time to just relax and to discuss matters of faith, and then discuss, hey, what do we have going on today? Is everything good right now? Or
is it a total shit sandwich?
Usually it's good.
You hope it's good. This time of year is I'm assuming a little more challenging in terms of if you're completely off the grid. Is it?
Yeah.
In terms of, I'm assuming where you live, because it's Northern Idaho, is that right?
Yeah.
Is that you load the fire up before you go to bed and then kind of restoke it in the morning, like it's going 24/7, or do you?
It's going well, it'll normally, unless you get up in the middle of the night or you have your the perfect combination of size logs in your wood burner, it's usually out by the morning.
Yeah.
So you got to get it going again the next morning.
Is it like a super old school cast iron one, or is it one of the newer ones with the fan blowers?
It does not have a fan because we are off grid, and that would be a long, a big drain on the battery right there.
Yeah.
But we've got a ICF house, so it's pretty energy efficient.
You'll have to educate me. What is ICF?
Insulated concrete forms.
Oh, no shit.
So basically you build your house out of these giant styrofoam Legos, and then they brace them and put a bunch of rebar in it, and then they dump concrete into it.
No shit.
And then so you have, a very strong house with 2.5 or 3 inches of foam on either side of the concrete.
Yeah.
So it's super well insulated.
Wow.
Soundproof. It's good. It's good.
Yeah, it probably stays fairly cool in the summertime too. Not that it gets nearly as hot up there, but it's cool. I looked at those fucking dome homes.
Yeah.
A few years, when we first moved here, and it was right after a couple of years in a row of really fucking gnarly hurricanes blew through. Getting to look at it because it's a dome structure and using a wood burner for heat. But even in the summer, what they guarantee or quoted was that it wouldn't raise or lower a degree per 24 hours, irrespective of what the outside weather was, which to me is pretty fucking impressive.
Mass is a good thing.
Yeah. So yeah, that's neat stuff. I for sure am of the mindset and mentality of getting maybe not completely off the grid, but being able to be that way, fairly easily, where it's basically set up to be that way, and do it regularly so that you can stay proficient at it and keep everything running the way that it needs to, should it come to that. But and actually I've looked at some places up in your neck of the woods too, but so who knows, maybe we'll be neighbors someday.
Come on up, I'll show you around.
Yeah. Do you not eat anything first thing in the morning?
My normal routine would be, I'll drink coffee first thing, and then I try not to eat until somewhere between noon and 3, and then first meal of the day is a salad.
Oh, okay. Do you work out at all first half of the day, or?
Yeah, I do. In fact, that's been one of the things I think has been beneficial about doing the intermittent fasting is, and I remember when I was always eating breakfast, it was, I get up in the morning, I eat breakfast, I go to work, check some emails, and then if I don't work out by 8:30 or 9, the workout was blown. I had to eat something else before working out again.
Yeah.
And now it's I'll get up in the morning, drink a cup of black coffee, drink 2 or 3 glasses of water, and go out and run 12 miles without any water or any food consumption during the whole thing. And that's just a normal, that's not a big deal anymore.
Yeah. Are most of your workouts that type of running or trekking long distance?
I like running and rucking. It's just very, kind of gives you some clarity, and it's relaxing for me. I really enjoy it. I do try and do, you know, strength stuff, pull-ups, push-ups, barbell squats, deadlifts, kettlebell swings, mace bell swings, ring dips, that kind of stuff as well. Yeah. And you know, on days when I do that, I'll do skills practice in between sets where you're, you know, generally I'll tool up with, you know, with all training tools and work draw stroke and all that stuff. So that's kind of my active rest is doing that kind. And then the other kind of big workouts I do, especially in the wintertime, is skiing. I love skiing.
Like traditional downhill, or you do telemark and all that kind of shit? Or
yes.
Yeah, everything?
Yeah, so it's funny. I was supposed to do a Silverton trip with one of my old teammates, Fro. Yeah. I
know Fro.
So we were supposed to do a trip last year to Silverton, which Silverton is this amazing, I've never skied there, but it's this amazing resort in Colorado. Yeah. They have one chairlift. They only let 200 people a day ski there, and you have to have a guide. They do like $150 heli runs. Like, so I've been telemarking for like the last 20 years because we had a bad season in Colorado. I'll shoot, probably 25 years ago now. And I just wanted something that was challenging, and I started telling and kind of never looked back. And then getting ready for this trip, I'm like, well, I don't want to slow anyone down. Like I ski very well. But I can ski better with downhill skis. So I got a new set of skis, like actually my first ever new pair of downhill skis, and man, they're amazing. Yeah. Like, and I started downhill skiing like pretty much all last season. I downhill skied, and it was like I rediscovered it's fun to go fast. Yeah. You know, I'm like going, you know, I'm clocking myself on my GPS going 50, you know, mid 50s mile an hour on skis, and it's like it's, you know, like I love it. So like, yeah, I'll telemark. I'll go, we can ski backcountry right from our house. We live on a mountain. So like I'll throw skins on and just go ski uphill. Yeah.
Do you snowshoe at all?
I hate snowshoeing.
Really?
But yes, we just climbed I
fucking love it.
Man. One of my local, if you learn how to ski, like what I tell everyone is especially if you live where we live. Yeah. If you snowshoe, any guy from Arizona can come up, and within an hour, he's as good as you are. Yeah. If you learn how to ski, you ever hear of this guy, Simo Hailha? He's a Finnish sniper in they call it the Winter War, when the Soviets invaded Norway. Like, he had like 400 or 500 kills in 2 months. Jesus. On skis, like through the snow, just crushing dudes. So I'm like, be like Simo, right? Be able to move, and it's so much more efficient. Yeah. If you learn how to ski, it's so much more efficient, both uphill and downhill. If you're out with another buddy, like by the time you're 1 or 2 guys back, it's like you're in a groomed cross country trail. Like there's almost zero effort. Yeah. You know, as you're going up.
And again, excuse my ignorance on it, but to do uphill, you're better served telemarking, right?
Actually, AT it stands for all terrain, or randonnée, or guys will call it tech bindings now. It's a lightweight downhill boot with a special tech fitting on your binding, and it basically allows you to go into a different mode and then pivot on the toe. Oh, okay. So now you have, like, when you're telemark skiing, you always have a certain level of resistance because you're actually on the ball of your foot. Mm-hmm. and that level of resistance never changes as you move forward, and that's what allows you to apply pressure into your edge to control your skis. Well, with AT, when you're going uphill, you don't need that when you're going uphill. When you're going uphill, it just pivots. It's free pivoting. So there's zero resistance. So it's actually significantly more efficient. And then when it's time to go downhill, you just flip your bindings over and you lock your heels in, and now you go downhill like you would on any normal downhill ski.
Oh shit. How long does it take to flip your bindings over and lock in? I mean, is it a matter of seconds?
10 seconds.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty fascinating stuff. To me, that whole environment, I love being in the snow and the mountains in the fucking wintertime. Like, that's my absolute favorite fucking place to be.
100%. I love doing it. I got to quantify like it. So if it's none of my buddies will ski with me, I will go out and snowshoe. I mean, we just me and one of my local buddies, Jake, just did. We climbed Goat Peak, which is in our county, and I think it was about 4,500 vertical climbed. Jesus. It was just under like 9 or 10 miles. It took us all day to do. We were going through waist deep snow. at the top. It went from like, because you're at like 24, I think, at the bottom, 23, 24, or maybe 2100 at the bottom. Like you're right in this river drainage, and it's 63 at the top.
God damn.
And, you know, so there's like almost no snow at the bottom. And then by the top, it's like crusted over massive, like 10, 12-foot cornices, like, you know, cornices when the snow gets built up by the wind and it's overhanging on these cliffs. And so it's like you got to stay well off of that, because otherwise you're walking like potentially just on snow over nothing. But yeah, pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, that's super wild. So segueing into your childhood, you mentioned growing up in Germany. Did you grow up doing
skiing? Yeah. I started skiing when I was 5, and we skied all over, you know, Germany and Switzerland, Austria, France. Like,
wow. What? Tell me about your childhood in terms of where you were you born there too?
So
or
I was born in Oregon, but I don't remember anything about that. We lived in SoCal for a few years. We moved to Germany when I was 5 years old. I lived in southern Germany, a little town called Speyer.
Was it a military thing? Or?
My parents were missionaries.
Oh, no doubt.
Yeah, so they were working with a local Lutheran church down in Bavaria. And so we lived in that spot in Germany for a few years, and then we moved up north to a little town called Langhagen, which is close to Hanover. Lived there for another, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. It was about 8 years total. I did K through 6th grade all in German. Like, spoke 0 German when we moved there, and my parents threw me in a German kindergarten as a 5-year-old. And awesome. About 3 months later, I spoke better German than they did, and they studied for like 2 years.
Wow. So I'm assuming you're still fluent in it?
Oh yeah. So yeah, I learned to read and write in German before I did English.
Wow, that's awesome.
So then after 6th grade, we moved to the San Jose area for about half a year. That was my first time going to an English-speaking school.
Yeah.
And then we moved to Swaziland in southern Africa. Basically, Swaziland is, if you picture South Africa all the way at the bottom right there, Swaziland is encircled 3/4 by South Africa and 1/4 by Mozambique.
Oh, wow.
So we lived there for about 2 years, and I loved it. Southern Africa is great. Had a great time there, and then we moved to Colorado Springs going into my sophomore year in high school. So,
if we can go back a little bit to your early childhood in Germany and transitioning from there to San Jose, which is quite the contrast. What was that like for you, kind of growing up as a German kid, basically, and then now finding yourself in America? Like, what were the big differences, school-wise, culture-wise, that stick out?
Well, it was a lot of me trying to fit in.
Yeah.
Because another kind of interesting thing, I remember at one point when we were in Germany, and I realized I've lived more of my life in Germany than I have in America. And that really bothered me, because I'm like, I had a very deep-seated, I'm an American identity. And all my friends were German. We spoke German almost 100% of the time. Even at home, we spoke German. I was thinking, I didn't even think about it, but like all of my thinking was done in German. And I just remember making a decision. I'm like, I'm an American. I'm going to start thinking in English. I'm going to, like, when I'm at home, I'm going to try and make a point of it to speak English to my parents.
Yeah.
So when we first moved back stateside, it was very much like, I'm just like, man, I'm an American, and like, this must be what Americans do. So I remember, I didn't used to say, well, yeah, like this, like that, and then seeing that, I'm like, this is how I must talk now, because this is how Americans talk, So very much, trying to fit in with how the other American kids were.
Yeah. Were there any bullying, getting picked on?
Absolutely. I got in fistfights. Well, it's funny because I went to a Christian school. It's called Los Gatos Christian School in Los Gatos, California. And in Germany, there was not the stigma on fighting. Mm-hmm. Like, kind of the unwritten rule was you don't punch people in the face and you don't rip their clothes.
Yeah.
But because you get in trouble for both of those, if they're bleeding, you get in trouble. But
everything else,
we fought all the time, like continuously. And so, yeah, I fought there as well. And then it was like, you're not allowed to do this. Like, you're a missionary kid, and you're not allowed to fight. And I'm like, but he was picking on me.
Yeah, that's a trip. Are some of the Christmas traditions that you and your family practice and enjoy now things that you did as a kid growing up, being over there?
Yeah, absolutely. Like that Bauernfrühstück thing being one of them. We just a few years ago switched over from trying to do all of our presents on Christmas Eve, like the Germans do, to and just having so many little kids and then doing a Christmas Eve service. It was like, hey, we're gonna switch over. We'll do stockings on Christmas Eve, and we'll do presents on Christmas morning, because it was just the kids were melting down. Yeah. So that's something where we kind of flipped back to more of an American style.
That's fascinating. I know a lot has changed both here and there since we were kids, but what would you say are kind of the big ticket contrasts between the way Germans raise kids and what their society / culture is like as a elementary school kid versus the way they are here? Are there things that glaringly stick out? From
the time I was in first grade, I walked to school by myself, so as a 6-year-old. That's probably something that that doesn't happen here.
Well, I mean, it did more. I mean, I walked to school in elementary school. Granted, it wasn't very far away, but still, I mean, a lot of that doesn't happen. But I guess, like, societally, is there a huge difference from what you remember?
I think the big things that were like some of the social taboos in the States, like, kids aren't allowed to have alcohol until they're 21. In Germany, like, I think that it says on the beer cans like 14. It was just like it was a very cultural thing. I mean, like the pastor that my dad worked with had a liquor cabinet. Yeah. But they thought it was highly inappropriate for the ladies to put on makeup. It's like, so there was some interesting cultural, cultural differences there. Some of the freedoms that I had. I mean, I think back of, like, as a little, punk skater kid in Germany, like, taking the bus and then the subway from small town that we were in into downtown Hanover to skate all day. Yeah. As like a 10, 11-year-old. Yeah. Like, yes. That's a level of freedom that, my children don't have right now. And looking back on it, I'm like, wow, there's like, I really could have gotten myself in trouble doing that stuff.
Yeah, no, same thing. I mean, I remember in second grade riding my bike by myself for miles away from my house, going and meeting friends halfway to their house, and we'd ride around. And I mean, the stuff that my parents let all 4 of us kids do, are similarly, like, there's a lot of things that I didn't let my kids do earlier on that I've kind of come to the realization that some of that is necessary. Like they just, you've got to give them some of that autonomy, or when they turn 18 and now don't have you to hold their hand, they're going to get themselves into much bigger, more dangerous trouble. So some of that, I think, is necessary.
We got to train them. And when they're younger, you can give them some training, and then, okay, go and explore a little bit, and then come back and we'll give you some more training. And absolutely, very important to do it that way.
All right. So when you came back and went to San Jose, you're getting in a lot of fights. At that school, grade-wise, sports-wise, what was that like?
Somewhat embarrassing for America. I'm coming from a public school in Germany to a private school in the States. And like, the math was so boring for me that I would just work ahead, and then I just I actually kind of started not doing good because I was so disengaged, because it was just totally boring for me.
Yeah, it was just way far behind America.
It was definitely like not near, academically it wasn't nearly as good. And then when I went from there, so I was way ahead as a 7th grader in the States, and then we moved to Africa, and I got rolled back a whole year. Like, I was the oldest kid because I couldn't, because at the school that I was trying to get into there, that would have been with my peer group, they'd all been doing French for 3 years. They'd been doing a lot of stuff that I hadn't. So I had to go and get extra tutoring in both French and math, because I had fallen behind in those subjects right there.
Wow. So moving from America now to Africa, what other than kind of what you already outlined, what was that like transition wise, culturally and school wise?
The school was interesting. It was very, Swaziland was a British protectorate for a long time, part of the Commonwealth. It's run by a king at the time. I think he was the youngest sovereign, like, in the world. There's a big expat community there. So expats are, Americans living abroad, or other Europeans, or Commonwealth folk living abroad. And that's kind of it's a cool atmosphere.
Yeah.
There was very much, that sense of American identity was definitely reinforced. I mean, like we would, I don't care at all about football. And we would stay up till like 2 a.m. and like go to someone's house that was able to somehow get, the Super Bowl, and we would watch it there. And it was just like, hey, well, it's only Americans that are going there. Yeah. Like we could go to the ambassador's house, to his private residence, and swim.
Oh, wow.
And we would just like show up and like speak English to the local gate guard, and he'd let us in, and we just could swim laps at the ambassador's house. So it was very much like there's that sense of American identity. The school that I went to was very socialist. Mandela's grandson went there.
Really?
It was, super. Because at the time, apartheid was still going on when I was there. Mm-hmm. So any of the black people that had money in South Africa, because of the racist laws, they weren't allowed to go to good schools in South Africa. So they would send their kids to schools abroad. Yeah. But with that came some of the heavy socialist leanings within that school.
So the school that you were in, what was the breakdown nationality wise there?
Probably, so it was a boarding school as well. So like some of these, the people that lived further away, they'd send their kids there, and they would stay on campus. I would say it was probably 50 or 60% expat kids, and then the rest would be more affluent local kids.
Yeah. Okay. And so your parents were doing missionary work there, I'm assuming.
Yep.
Did you play in all of the places, I guess shy of the time spent in San Jose, but in Germany and in Africa, did you get involved in missionary work at all, like with other kids, or
not really?
You're just
no, like like there'd be, we'd go on the road with my dad sometimes for stuff. So like I would see some of it. We were always involved with the local churches and youth programs and stuff like that as a kid growing up, but it wasn't really it wasn't me over there working. I was just working on being a kid,
just tagging along.
Yep.
Yeah. So you go from there to Colorado Springs, and is that where you finished high school?
Yeah.
Yeah. What was that another big shift, or because
huge shock right there, going from Africa to, and then, I should have gone in as a freshman in the States, but having been in school in Africa and they were significantly better, when I tested, they're like, no, you go in as a sophomore. Yeah. So also very much like wanting to be an American and kind of, just kind of figuring out where, in the high school that I went to was very, had very much had the cliques. We had the cowboys and we had the gangsters and we had the jocks and kind of the, the nerds, and you had all these different, groups, and kind of like, okay, where do I shake out at? Where am I going to fit in? And, the partiers and all this stuff. So,
yeah. What were your parents doing when they came back to the States in San Jose and Colorado Springs?
So San Jose was our, the organization that my dad was working for at the time. It was just like one of the things that every decade or so, like you come back to the States and do professional development, or just take a break, make sure your family kind of
still
learns America.
Like.
Yeah. And then when we came back from Africa, it was my dad was working for recruiting for the organization.
Do your parents still work for that same group?
No, my dad started his own organization called African Leadership Development a few years after I joined the service.
Oh, okay.
So, and he's been doing that. He's still doing that. In fact, I think he just got back from Africa like today or tomorrow or something like that. So he's still going over there. Yeah, charging hard.
Yeah, that's wild. All right, so culture shock. What group did you land yourself in, would you say?
Sort of jock-ish, but then started, partying a little bit as well.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a surprise, man.
Yeah, I kind of went on the wild side kind of last maybe 2 years of high school, into the first couple of years in the teams. I was kind of...
Really?
Yeah.
That's surprising. Is some of that because there was such a lack of it for the first part of your childhood, do you think, or what? Why do you suppose that is?
I don't know. I think part of it was just like I had friends, and they're like, here's a beer. I'm like, oh, this is fun.
Yeah.
You know, like, yeah. So that was, I went through a phase of kind of being a little bit wild.
Yeah. Does that influence how you feel and think about raising your own kids?
I mean, I think it gives me a better understanding just to go, okay, well, yeah, some, you know, people are going to do that. I mean, you know, biblically it talks about if you raise your children a certain way when they're old, you know, they'll come back to that. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but that certainly was the case with me. Yeah. You know, fortunately, I have very godly parents that were praying for me a lot, which is, you know, the older I get, it's the more I appreciate that. Just having solid, godly parents that are very much, you know, not going off the deep end and very, very solid is just such, it's very, very, very important. So just looking at it as, okay, yeah, my kids, they might go off the deep end for a while. And that's just, you know, ultimately, like, you know, we want our children to know and love Jesus. That is our number one thing. At a certain point for them, it will become their thing. Yeah. Or it won't. Yeah. But we want to make sure that we're facilitating and training them to the best of their ability so that when, like, the sink or swim moment shouldn't come at 13. Yeah. You know, they should be fully trained before like the, you know, the big moments in life come.
No, absolutely. Did you get into any real trouble partying wise, or was it?
We did some dumb stuff. We got, you know, nothing on a permanent record. Yeah.
just normal high school.
Normal high school, getting in fights and, you know, stupid stuff like that.
Well, how would you rate yourself at that point in your life, getting in fights wise? You said you were kind of in the Jock. Did you play sports? Like, were you pretty athletic at that age too, or?
So I'd been doing Taekwondo. I started doing that. We talk martial arts. I'd done a little bit of judo in Germany. Then when we moved to Africa, I'd started doing Taekwondo and really enjoyed that. It was very like old school Korean dude, like barely spoke any English. Like, you know, we didn't wear pads when we sparred, and we sparred hard. You know, it was just like, I enjoyed that. Moved to the States and kept doing that. And then, like, they don't have organized sports overseas the way they do in the States, which is one of the reasons I think we produce better soldiers than just about anyone else in the world, is because we have these organized school sports. Yeah. So my sophomore year was my first, you know, year really in a full year in a public school in the States. And I just didn't really know. And then, I mean, I didn't even understand the rules of football. So, like, I didn't go out for that. And then I don't know who got me into it, but it was like, hey, you know, wrestling practice starts, you know, here next week. And I'm like, okay, I'll go. Like, that sounds cool. Yeah. And that ended up being huge. I mean, I've been pretty much grappling ever since then, and I love it. Yeah. So I wrestled my junior year. It was my first year wrestling. You know, obviously I'd maybe slightly better than 60% of my matches, you know, starting way late in the game. And then my senior year, I was like, well, I'm gonna run cross country to get in shape for wrestling season. And I wrestled, and I was like one match away from going to states, which just, man, I put a lot of effort into that. And then knowing that I'm going to go into the Navy, I'm like, well, I don't want to just sit around and get fat. So I'm going to do track, you know, for the final season, and ended up going to states for pole vaulting of all things. Pole vaulting. And it's funny because I really didn't apply myself that much. Like, they, you know, coming from having run cross country for a season, they're like, oh, you're going to run the 4x8. And I'm like, you know, like I ran it a couple times because they pretty much made me. Yeah. And then I'm like, you know, like I'm significantly better for our team just focusing on pole vaulting. Yeah.
The 800, I think, is the worst distance in the world.
Yes.
You know? Like, that's
horrible.
Yeah, it's like the worst of everything. When was the moment where you decided that you wanted to join the Navy, and was being a SEAL attached to that?
So I have wanted to be in the military since As long as I can remember.
Yeah.
Honestly, I've got pictures of me with my dad's old green field jacket on with a green beret and a single barrel non-functioning shotgun and a beard painted onto my face. You know?
Was he a Green Beret?
He had been a chaplain's assistant, but assigned to one of those, to an ODA. During Vietnam time frame, he didn't go over, but so I'd wanted to do it my whole life. So my dad saw that and was like, well, if you want to make the military career, you should go to West Point. So that was my goal for a long, long time. In my sophomore year in the States, I was doing great on the grades. And then my junior year started wrestling and started drinking beer. And I was like, I was like barely squeaked by in high school then to graduate. And I just, partway through my senior year, I'm like, I have no desire to go to college for another 4 years. Yeah. I still want to join the military. So I just started looking at what is the hardest organization to get into with the highest likelihood of seeing action. And that's how I approached it. I did my research between, SF, Rangers, and Marine Recon, and the SEALs looked like the hardest organization to get into. So years later, I think it was the right decision. I did not always think that during various points, but
from you didn't mention swimming at all or being in the water at all. I mean, going from being wanting to join West Point to grades kind of sucking, running and wrestling, the Army still seems like maybe a better fit in terms of what you did. How did you couch that?
So I had actually swam for about a season and a half when we were in Africa.
Oh, okay.
They had put the call out for, hey, if you want to join the swim team, come down and you have to be able to swim 4 laps. Yeah. So 100 meters, you had to be able to swim. Yeah. And I remember swimming that and thinking, man, that was a long swim. And then a few months later, it's like I'm swimming 20 laps as a warm up. Yeah. So that was hugely helpful in me getting through BUD/S. And honestly, I hated swimming. Yeah. Like I did not enjoy like competitive swimming at all. But I'm very, very grateful both to that and same thing. I did not like cross country. Like I really enjoy running now. I hated it at the time. Yeah. But both of those things really helped prep me for BUD/S.
Yeah. Did you struggle with swimming at BUD/S at all, or was it pretty?
No. I was always probably top quarter. Yeah. Maybe top 10 guys.
What was the hardest part of BUD/S for you?
Well, being cold, it would hands down be the worst part of it. The part that I ended up struggling with the most was running. Yeah. I had post-Hell Week, I could not keep a 12-minute mile to save my life. Really? I mean, it's crazy because I never failed a run before Hell Week. I never got even gooned before Hell Week. And then after Hell Week, I could not run to save my life. And so like the first phase guys are looking at me and they're like, okay, like we know this guy was putting out beforehand and like we don't know what's going on now. But they gave me the benefit of the doubt. And then I roll into dive phase and they're just like,
fuck you,
merciless. You're like, who is this dirtbag that is like that can't run? Yeah.
Were you injured?
I don't know what it was. Like I've had people afterwards say, well, maybe you were anemic or this or that. I don't know. Maybe it was in my mind. I honestly I don't know.
But it wasn't like stress fractures or anything?
No, like it was not like I've got a severe pain anywhere. It was just like, man, I just cannot move fast. Yeah. So I went into dive phase with class 199 and ended up failing my dive physics class.
Really?
For as the dumbest thing, because I could do the physics part of it, but I had used a calculator all through high school. And I'd forgotten how to do long division. And they wouldn't let you use a calculator for the dive physics. So it's like I failed dive physics because of long division.
Yeah. Did you get rolled for it?
So I got rolled for that. Shit. So me and like probably 8 other guys got rolled for failing dive physics. And we all got put into a remedial math course, which was highly embarrassing because literally this lady, she gets in front of us and she goes, starts writing and she goes, this is how you add. Just like, oh no. God. So by the time I joined up with class 200, I could do long division. I aced the test, but I still couldn't run.
Yeah.
So I make it all the way through pool comp. I'm on day 1 of Draeger dives. I fail a timed run that morning. And I'm standing in front of the basic training officer, and he's like, Rapier, you have 2 choices and they're both bad. You know? And basically one of the choices was cleaning bedpans at Balboa, is how he put it to me. The other choice is going back into first phase. And I'm like, I'll take first phase, sir.
Really?
So they're like, go to supply and get a white t-shirt.
No
and
shit.
go join up with your class. So
No way.
Check.
Holy shit.
So I went from day 1 of Draeger dives to life-saving.
Holy shit.
So they didn't make me go through Hell Week the second time. And actually it ended up being good for me because the pace of the runs was slower and I was actually able to keep up and kind of build my runs back up. And, you know, by the time we finished, by the time I graduated with 201, like I was back up into, you know, maybe the top quarter or top third of runners.
So it was a gradual getting back.
Definitely.
It wasn't like just one.
I almost think that like somehow I just got out of shape. Like you should have just gotten back on a good running program afterwards.
Yeah, that's wild. So an academic and a performance role. Yeah. Wow. So you started with 199, graduated at 201.
Yep.
Yeah. That's fascinating, man. All right. So you graduate with 201, and then you go all the normal pipeline, which we've had enough guests on here to talk about that. But you went to Team 3 first.
Yep.
And that's where we didn't work together, but we're at Team 3 together for I don't know, maybe a couple of years probably, but. I remember you being there, but you know, knowing that we never worked together, it's fairly vague. But how would you kind of synopsize your time at Team 3?
I think the guys were great. I learned a ton deploying on a boat. You know, the ARG Alpha deployments were miserable.
Yeah.
You know, living on a ship, bad.
It's worse than prison.
Yeah, and I had a poor attitude about it at the time. I mean, like you know, somewhat arrogant, and you know, I'm like, why are we on ships? Like we should be training for war, you know, like that was my attitude. Instead of, you know, now I'd be like, man, I've got these master class machinists and welders and like all this knowledge on the ship. And you know, Navy guys like SEALs. Like I could have gone to any of those departments and been like, man, that's pretty cool. Can you teach me how to do that? And like probably learned a bunch of really cool skills. But I was too arrogant to 20-year-old, you know, screaming frogman.
Were you still kind of partying at that point?
That first deployment, yes.
So what changed with? Was there
absolutely
a reckoning that
there was? I was driving back from Colorado. It was when I was still like, you know, it was still close enough to high school to where like I was still hanging out with some high school friends during leave time. And driving back to ski in Colorado. And so I remember driving back one night. It's late at night. I'm somewhere between Colorado and California. I don't remember what state I was in, but I remember thinking, doctrinally, I don't believe that you can lose your salvation. But looking at my life, you can't look at my life right now and think that, yeah, this guy's a follower of Christ. And I was very convicted. Like, this is not what I'm supposed to be doing. And I just started praying, saying, God, please give me the desire to change, because I didn't have the desire. I'm like, man, I was having a good time, like going out with my buddies, drinking and whatnot. Like I was having fun. So I started asking for the desire to change, and God gave it to me. Like I started, got plugged in with a local church, was going to the Rock Church there in San Diego. And
Miles McPherson.
Yeah.
I went there a few times.
Got plugged in with a small group out there, and actually started reading my Bible. And I'm like, wow, it's like I'd grown up with Bible stories and Bible reading and all that, and it was just like never really real to me. And then all of a sudden, I'm reading through, I'm like in Romans, like this is how I'm supposed to live, like, So it very much, and I'm definitely still ups and downs with with screwing things up sometimes, but that was definitely from that point. That was kind of the trajectory that like, if I truly believe this, then I should be serious about this.
Yeah. Do you think, and this is just strictly from your perspective of how you interpret being a Christian, do you think that you can do both, sort of? And by that, I mean, similarly to say, you work out really hard, right? You live a super disciplined life in terms of nutrition, in terms of sleep, in terms of exercise, in terms of keeping your skills sharp. no different than, say, you know, nutrition as an example, having cheat meals or taking, you know, a week off because you just, you know, from working out because you feel like you need it or whatever. Do you think that there's an ability to live that way Christian-wise in that same regard?
I mean, we all do that sometimes.
But I mean intentionally, though. No,
not intentionally. I don't think it should be. I mean, we're all sinners. Like, we're all going to screw things up. So I think, you know, looking at it, what I'm not going to do is go, okay, I'm going to schedule, you know, I'm going to go ahead and purchase my indulgences now and then, you know, spend a week wherever doing whatever I want to. Like, I would say that is, you know, I would question how serious you are about your faith if you're doing that. But if you're, you know, if you are genuinely committed to following a path and you screw up and then you repent and you're like, man, you know, forgive me. Like, I screwed up, like, help me not to do that again. Like, that's, I mean, that's what your faith and your walk with Christ is about, is, I mean, because you're going to screw things up. And it's that you were moving in this direction and then you're like, okay, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to move in this direction. Doesn't mean I'm going to like have slip ups sometimes. Yeah.
So I'm curious, you know, in terms of you kind of having that epiphany type moment, if you will, on the trip back, and then going back to a SEAL team where you're with platoon mates, that I can only imagine that many of them were probably like, dude, what the fuck happened to you? Right? Like, was there some of that? Was there a struggle or a difficulty on your end of going back as kind of a new you?
Oh, for sure. And it's not like I turned the page and, like, you know, never drank again or, you know, anything like that. Like, there's absolutely, like, you know, it's a process. It's you're being refined as you're doing this. But yeah, I think by my second platoon, I don't think I drank at all. Like, I was pretty much like always the driver, like always hung out with the guys, like very deliberate about, like, I'm going to go out and hang out with the guys, like, kind of regardless of where you're going. I'm going to go hang
Platinum
out.
Plus at Shaw's. You haven't heard that in a while, have you?
I haven't heard that one in a long time.
Shout out to Platinum Plus in Memphis, Tennessee, which doesn't exist anymore. But anyway, those are the days. So I guess, I mean, was there a struggle in terms of them kind of busting your balls about, like, dude, you know, you don't drink anymore? Like, what the fuck happened? Like, did you find yourself
there's some of that, but I more so, I think it's like willingness to spend time with the guys was more than, like, how much alcohol are you consuming? I mean, I experienced that when I first went to the command as well. Like, you know, going through our selection, and then, you know, the first couple of years of being upstairs was very much like, you know, like, I didn't have a life. You know, like, all I did was train and, you know, go to work. But I would still go hang out with the guys, you know, at CP Shuckers or, you know, wherever. Because I'm just like, hey, this is what I mean, that's how guys form bonds, right? You have to be deliberate about hanging out together. And so I was deliberate about doing that.
So getting into that, so you spent an enlistment or so at SEAL Team 3, and then decided to go to development group. Was it just kind of the next logical step of saying, this is what I want to do for a living, and this is the next place I need to go? Or was there more to that, anything different than that? Or what was your mentality?
So I had no clue about DEVGRU when I joined. And then, you know, when I got to Team 3, like, you start hearing little whispers, you know, and kind of as soon as I, you know, and I would ask questions and, you know, get some more whispered answers. And it's like, pretty quickly, I'm like, that's where I want to be, you know, but I knew that as a new guy, as a first platoon guy, but as a first platoon guy, you cannot say that. You're like, you know, cause you're focused on your job, and, like, you know, be a good team guy. Be a good team guy first, and then worry about whether or not you're going to screen later. And so I very much took that approach, although, like, in my mind, I'm like, that's where I want to go. So I screened after my first platoon, and then left, and I had super short turnaround. Like, I got back from my first deployment, and I believe 3 days later, I was going out to Lord to do a land warfare workup with my second platoon. Like, I thought I was deploying with them. Like, when the OIC sold it to me, I thought I'm getting off the boat and, like, getting on another one and going overseas. And I'm like, well, that's more chance to do real stuff. So, like, I'll do that. but then we got back and it was clarified. No, actually, you're just going out to the desert to be there for 4 or 5 weeks.
That's awesome.
So,
in terms of the journey along there, of what you can mention, and I've had some other guys from from storied careers at that command talk a little bit about it, so I won't beat it too hard. But I'm always fascinated by kind of the difference between the regular SEAL teams and development group in terms of that further selection, going through the selection process there. And it's to me, it's always fascinating that each guy kind of has different perceptions of the experience there. I'm curious to get your take in terms of how you would compare it to your other time in the SEAL teams and how it contrasts, and just kind of walk us through that a little if you could.
Yeah. So in terms of difficulty, and again, different guys have different strengths and weaknesses. Like, I thought our NSW sniper school was way harder than our selection was.
Really?
I failed because of stocks. I failed my first time through.
Oh, wow.
Had to go back and redo all my stocks.
Was that when it was at Coalinga or at
the first time I went? It was all of our shooting was done in Coalinga, and like most of our stocks I think were like at Miramar, something like that. And then by the time I went through after my first deployment, I came back and was able to go through and just do the stocks, and that was all out on an island in the desert out there.
What would you say was the most challenging about sniper that made it that way?
It was understanding that just kind of looking at it as a game. Like, I was very serious that when I failed, I was very serious about, like, I probably could have made my shots each time, but my distance from the target wasn't always perfect, right? So the standard in sniper school was 200 yards plus or minus 20, and you had to get that via milling, either people or trucks or something where you're shooting the guys that are looking for you. And so I would either be outside of range or I would get walked on after my first shot. The second time I went through, I'm like, okay, this is a game. Like, I'm never going to stalk against a place where they know I'm coming. They know where the left and right is, and they're on binoculars looking for me. And they've got guys running. I'm never going to do that. So I'm going to treat it like a game. And also I'm going to veg up a lot more. That was the other thing I wasn't doing. It was like, I wasn't vegging up properly. And for the guys that don't know what that is, it's basically,
it's becoming a vegan. That's what that is.
Yes. It's going the opposite of carnivore. No, it's basically turning yourself into a bush. So like, guys had talked about, rubber bands on your bipod. And it was like no, zip ties, like big zip ties. And I would just, at about 300 yards out, I would just take a break and I would chop down a tree, or one of those tree bushes out there. And I would just, giant fistfuls of branches, leafy branches. And I'm just zip tying them onto my bipod, zip tying them onto my scope, and basically just turning myself into a bush. So the second time I went through, I got walked on once, and afterwards the spotter said, well, I couldn't see you, but there were no other bushes out there. I'm like, well, how's that? Like, we're in the desert. Come on.
God, that's fucked up. But typical. Like,
very typical.
Is there elements or any aspect of going through the sniper course that, the 10 deployments and so many years that you spent at development group where you can pinpoint, like, that training probably saved my life, or at least contributed significantly to your operational capability?
I mean, some of the fieldcraft stuff, I think, definitely helped. Obviously the shooting stuff helped, but it's like the missions that we did, they weren't distant. They weren't like historical sniper missions. Like, that just wasn't, like, we always tried to get that kind of work, and it was always like, well, that's not really your job.
So you did basically no sniper work there? I
mean, I was a recce guy for 4 years. And I think the longest shot I took was like 60, 70 yards, something like that. So it was all very, like, we were trained to shoot distance. But then, I mean, we were, the work that we were doing, we were taking overwatch positions, and it just wasn't that. It was nighttime. There wasn't a whole lot of distance shooting to be done.
That's good stuff. And we'll for sure get into some of those stories of what you can talk about. I am curious. So sniper was harder than the selection. So selection,
I thought so.
I guess comparing it to buds, easier than buds too. Then I assume.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I mean, buds is buds is buds, man. It just sucks. Like going through selection was.
I mean, it was
very challenging, very very stressful. Like they definitely do a great job of increasing the pressure during certain evolutions, but it was also very like, okay, now we're teaching stuff, and some of it was just like I spent a lot of time shooting on my own time. Mm-hmm. So like I didn't have a problem with any of the shooting standards.
Yeah.
We'd had a guy that had come from the command that had taken over training cell right before I got there. So when we went and did CQB, like it was taught the same way it was taught at the command. So like I wasn't having to I mean, there's minor things that were different, but I didn't have to relearn a whole lot of stuff. So I felt like it wasn't, while it was very stressful and very challenging, it was not like overwhelming.
Yeah. For the guys that it was overwhelming, do you think that it was the shooting standards that made it that way primarily? Because that's
most guys, it's just picking up the CQB. Yeah. Like that's and then if they have a hard time shooting, or if they have, I mean, back then it was, your reputation was based on like, you shoot hard, can you run fast, and are your heads up in the house?
Yeah.
If you can do those things well, you had a good reputation.
Yeah.
And I was like a decent runner. Like I wouldn't, I didn't fall out on any runs. Like I wasn't amazing, but I trained like a maniac prior. Like I did the whole heart rate thing for like almost 2 years prior to going to selection.
Yeah. So,
I'm doing, 2-hour runs, on at the time it was like a 150 or 155 heart rate and keeping a 730-ish pace, which, it was good for me.
Yeah. And what year was this? Was this
2000?
2000.
Yeah.
So you were there. At what point in your workup or deployment or whatever were you at when 9/11 happened?
We were back. We were on alert. I was actually on the quarterdeck when one of the planes struck. So yeah, that was quite the day. I mean, we saw that, and then saw the second one hit, and it was like, we're going to war, boys.
Yeah.
And it was funny because it was downplayed by some of the senior guys at the command, like, we're not going to do anything. Like those other guys are going to do all the work.
Yeah. The green guys.
Yeah. Those guys down south are going to do all the work, and like they'll be done in a month, and we'll and man,
here we are 20 years later.
Yeah, they couldn't have been more wrong about that one.
Yeah. What for what you can mention, what process did you guys go through in terms of the first deployment post 9/11, and what was that like? Were you there with on that first push with Neil Roberts and?
No, I was in a different squadron.
Okay.
So I didn't get over there until 2002.
Oh, okay.
And I can say this now, but we really didn't know what we were doing back then. We thought we did, but really we'd been training for the last war. We'd been training for another Operation Eagle Claw type evolution.
Yeah.
Everyone thought, okay, we're going to get one big mission, and then we're going to go and drink beer and talk about it for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
And this whole idea of sustained combat operations and going out, like what eventually turned into going out every night, or sometimes going out multiple times throughout the day and night, was completely foreign to us. So there's a lot of stuff that we're still flying helos in, landing extremely close, like a bunch of stuff that we completely got away from. We did nothing. It was all very stormtrooper, like lots of guys, go fast, make a lot of noise, and we got away from all that stuff.
Yeah, real quick, I imagine.
Yeah.
Your first deployment over there, did you guys get to do much, or?
We did a couple hits, did some driving around. We were up in Konar, I think the first IED that they did up there. I wasn't out with the guys that time. It's funny, I got pictures from when the guys came back, and like a couple guys got fragged a little bit, but no one was hurt bad. But I mean, that's, partway into the war, like you didn't drive around in Konar, like, back then we were just thin-skinned vehicles, like extra set of armor hanging out the side of your truck.
Yeah.
And driving, I mean, we had 240 Golfs mounted on the top of our trucks, you know, on pintle mounts, you know, and you'd stand there driving over those horrible roads for hours and hours at a time. So, I mean, it was a cool deployment. Like, I mean, got to do some hits, crashed in a 60 up in the mountains in Konar. That was exciting.
Anybody get hurt?
Nope. I mean, not from that. Yeah. Some guys got hurt fast roping onto the side of a mountain and rolling down the hill. Guys bent, I think they bent a saw. Some of our supporting guys bent a saw. I think they lost a shotgun. There was like all sorts of, we medevaced some guys off of that, but no one was seriously hurt. Yeah. But we had to, it kind of, I mean, you know, we kind of grew up here in the whole, you know, watching Black Hawk Down and reading the book, and then like, you know, and we'd actually just done a practice thing like 2 months before where our crew had been, you know, on a 60, and the, you know, pre-briefed, you know, we didn't know this, but pre-briefed, the helo pilot starts like, you know, kicking the tail back and forth, and we're going down, and like, so we'd gone through all the procedures, like, okay, we're gonna, you know, rotor brakes on, we're gonna Z everything out, pull the pins on the miniguns, grab the crew, let's go. And so basically we had come to a hover over what we thought was our target, and it's cold, you know, it's early fall up in Konar, and like I'm sitting there, I got a 100-foot fast rope in one of those big wall climbing bags on my lap, and I'm like waiting for the crew chief to give me the, you know, throw ropes, and then you just hear this whop, and the bird just noses over and starts diving down these, you know, the side of the mountain. And I just remember looking, it was either cliffs or terraced, you know, ag. Yeah. And I was just like trying to get my legs inside, because I'm like, we're gonna hit, we're gonna roll, I'm gonna chop my legs off. That's what was going through my mind. Never mind that you're just gonna die from like from everything else going on, but like I'm worried about getting my legs chopped off. So, man, hats off to this pilot. I mean, those guys are best pilots on the planet. Yeah. This dude sticks it, like auto rotating, sticks it in a creek bed. Wow. And you know the brief they always give you, wait until the rotor blades stop before you get out. Well, my buddy Rosie looks at me, we're sitting in the door, he's like, rotor blades are still going. He's like, let's get out of here. Like, good idea. Like, we hop out, we take a knee, we're inside of the rotor blade. This was so tight. As soon as the rotors started dipping, because they slowed down, they start hitting rocks. Holy shit. And we're like, get back in the helo. Like, so we jump back in. But then after that, it was like, you know, so it was weird hearing on comms, we have a Black Hawk down. Like they're saying that, and we're like, man, we just heard that in a movie like a few years ago for the first time. But then after that, it was like, as briefed, all right, pop the rotor brakes on, guys, Z everything out in the bird, pull the pins on the miniguns, let's go. Yeah. You know, and then we start walking, you know, it's Konar, so we're walking straight up the side of a mountain. Man, how far did you have to evacuate before you got? It was a big operation. We had a bunch of dudes there. So we basically we didn't want to be, I mean, it was the low ground right there. So we just didn't want to be there. We pushed up. Another crew was where we'd fast roped or where we had attempted to fast rope wasn't even the target. Like, it was like the secondary guys got to hit the actual target. It was just total dry hole. Yeah. And then we ended up camping there for like the next 36 hours because they dumped all the fuel out of the thing, took the rotor blades off, brought in a Slick 47, and just picked the thing up and flew out with it. Oh, wow. No shit. And we put all of our guys on a Slick 47, like 50 plus dudes. It was crazy. You know, we're all just like standing room only. Like if we go down now, this is bad.
I mean, elevation wise and that amount of weight, was there a boost issue? Or
the Slick ones, like, you know, they don't have all that avionics and armor and all that other stuff that the fancy the MHs have. So they've got a significantly higher lift capability. Yeah,
that's fucking wild. So that was your first deployment there, right?
Yeah.
Is it hard for you to separate the 10 deployments, like to do 2 through 9 kind of blend together in a lot of ways?
Yeah, I mean, some were not that memorable. Some, I mean, that first deployment, like, other than, you know, that and a couple other things, like, they weren't really that memorable. You know, there's times where like we did stuff and I was like, man, it's kind of a slow deployment. We're not doing a whole lot. Yeah. Things really started heating up, I feel like, after initial invasion of Iraq. Like, that was another, like, so we were last to go to OEF but then we were on the first wave into Iraq, which was awesome. Like it's totally worth it to like kind of like just the way the lineup ended up like that. You know, so that was a really cool deployment. It was short. It was 2 months. That was a great time. And then after that deployment, things kind of started to work their way up. Like we started changing our tactics because, you know, everyone was running away from us. So we started getting a lot sneakier in what we were doing. And then I want to say it was probably 05, 06 that things really started like, okay, we're actually fighting now all the time. And that's, you know, when the deployments really started getting good.
Yeah. What was there one in particular that you remember as kind of when that shift happened in terms of your mentality shift and kind of the guys like, okay, now this is the fucking real deal, you know, type of scenario? What
we did one where we did half the deployment in Iraq, and then they're like, hey, things are heating up, like they just got a bird shot down in Afghanistan, and it's like, we need dudes. And I remember being pissed that like I got pulled out of Iraq because Iraq was, you know, the cool place at the time. That's where all the work was being done. And now I got to go back to OEF, which had been slow up until that point. And first stop we went on, we smoked like 2 or 3 dudes. I'm like,
maybe it's not so bad.
This is a whole new Afghanistan. Like, all right. Yeah. Like it's the guys are willing to fight now. So you know, that's, you know, that was better for us. Yeah.
Can you recall the split between Iraq and Afghanistan deployment wise? How many you've done at each?
It was 2 and 8. Yeah. It was only two deployments to Iraq.
Oh, okay. And it was that initial push in, or when it was pretty dicey at 05, 06, like were you in the triangle area, or what? Where were you guys? Can you say?
We were in Al-Assad.
Oh, okay.
When we were in Iraq, I mean, we were out of, you know, Baghdad, you know, initially, once we were actually on the first fixed wing that landed in Baghdad International. Well, Saddam International still at the time, hadn't been renamed yet, but that was, and what a crazy landscape. Like, you know, the 19-year-old PFC that had been living in the desert for however long, like when they rolled through there, they were just chain gunning, you know, commercial airliners who were sitting there. I mean, there's like all these burned out airlines. It's like, what happened there? Oh, a Bradley.
Yeah, that was a trip for sure. I remember being there, moving through that area right at the start of it, and just God, what a fucking crazy time to be there for sure. But in terms of the 2 deployments that you spent in Iraq, I'd like to spend a little time talking about kind of what the gist of what you were doing there. You know, specifically, I guess was it all just raid, high value target type stuff?
Yeah, just
are there any?
I would say not always high value, but like just dismantling networks.
Yeah. Are there any operations that you went on that stick out as being exceptionally kick the hornet's nest over, or where you guys, you know, really had your hands full? Or
honestly, Iraq was not. I mean, like an initial invasion, like we had some stuff where we got shot up pretty good. I mean, actually the very first target that we did, we didn't get permission to blow, to knock the power out to the town that we were going to until we were on short final. And because they didn't want to degrade local infrastructure. Yeah. So they blow the power plant, and we're flying in like this and totally backlit. And we were the 3rd helo, we were primary assault. And so the first helo, like the bad guys woke up. Second helo, they started shooting. By the 3rd helo, which was us, like they got their lead down, and we were properly backlit. And it was just like, you know, like something out of Band of Brothers, just seeing like sparks in your helicopter. We had the right front door gunner took a round in the head on infill. And I believe one of the Rangers got shot during that as well. And amazingly enough, so it's kind of a funny story. One of our EOD guys, so we land, you know, the EOD, you know how much stuff the EOD guys carry. So like we land and they hit the brakes hard, and like a bunch of guys fall down, and he's all the way forward in the aircraft. And I think we were all masked up at the time too. So it's like, you can't hear, you can't see a whole lot. Like this dude's laying down, and he's like the turtle that you flip on his back. Like he can't get up. The bird takes off and he's like looking around. He's like, I missed the big one. Like, this is it. Like, I missed it. Like, all the guys are gone. And then he looks over and here's this aircrew dude shot in the head. So he grabs a puff jacket, Mountain Hardwear Chugach jacket out of like our warmy bag that we wore, because it was a long flight in there, and like bandages this guy. And because there was only 2 casualties, this Ranger being one of them, and then the door gunner being the other one, like, because he was labeled expectant, you know, which is they think he's going to die. But because there was only 2 casualties on the mission, like he got to go to the an SRT team standing by, like within 10 minutes, like he's got surgeons working on him. And he lived. And unfortunately, the Ranger, my understanding is he died a couple months later because, you know, he got shot, he got infection, and he ended up dying.
Wow. So the guy that got shot in the head fucking lived, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
Crazy. And then we went, and so the next day, we go out there to look at that helo, and I was in the right rear window. Like, that's where I was, like on infill, looking out of the window, and I'm looking, and it's like the cartoon. Bullet hole, bullet hole, bullet hole, bullet hole, like all around where I was standing.
Jesus. Man, that's a fucking trip.
So yeah, there was quite a bit of like stuff like that. I mean, like there was one that we did. I think we had 50 some supporting aircraft, and just like, because we pushed way further north than anyone had at the time, and it was just amazing because you'd see, like, we're coming in low over this lake, and you're just looking up and you're seeing tracer fire and, you know, explosions from the flak, like way up at altitude, because the F-18s were dropping flares up high to like distract dudes. And you're just looking, and I'm like seeing this tracer fire. I'm like, you know, I'm like I don't know if I'm shouting in my mind, but I'm like, you know, we're not on target yet, so I'm, you know, I've got a little bit of time. I'm like, get those guys. And you'd see the tracer fire coming up, and then boom, massive explosion from where it was, you know, where it was initiating, you know, from. And so those guys did the pilots did a great job of like, hey guys, look up here while we fly in low, and, you know, miniguns blazing. It was a pretty cool op.
God damn. The rest of the time in Iraq, were there any missions that there were like high value guys that you got, you know, that kind of stand out, or any like big victory?
Who was it? The guy that, one of the guys that was on the Achille Laura, we got.
Really? Which
was cool. He was an old dude. He died in custody like a few years later.
Yeah.
And one of the old timers that had surrounded him like 20 years before was with us.
No, sure.
Frogman.
Wow.
Yeah. That had like been on that thing. And I believe it was the Italian government let those guys get away.
Yeah.
Like he was there with us.
Man, that's a trip.
Yeah. So
that's really cool.
That was pretty cool.
On that specific mission, or any of the other ones, were there times where kind of walking through almost like it's a, you know, say a movie scene, were there instances like that where it was like textbook, you're going in and dropping dudes on the way in and going in? Like, can you walk us through any of that?
Honestly, like we did not do as much shooting as we did later. You know, when I say that, when the war kind of got good for us, or when it heated up, like we started shooting dudes a lot more.
Yeah.
That deployment, we didn't shoot a whole lot of guys.
Okay.
Like, I mean, there was like, it was, you know, amazing air support and like dropping a whole lot of bombs, and, you know, like we worked with Bradleys and M1s, tanks, for the first time ever there. And it's because when we first got into Baghdad, like they're like, the threat is too high for helos.
Yeah.
And so we, you know, about a 15-minute conversation with whatever 1st or 3rd Armored Division, I forget which one. And now we're their dismounts.
Yeah.
And so I remember the first time, like, because we could hear their comms. And so they're doing the nav. We're just telling them, hey, we want to get to here. This is our target. We want blocking positions here. And we want to get dropped off here. And, you know, when we do a route, it's like we take it very seriously. Like, I'd have multiple navigate. If I have lead nav, we got multiple nav systems up and running. I would have a guy in the back seat, like with the secondary system, the second vehicle would have another guy like that's following every turn. So if I'm like, hey, my stuff's down, he would just take over. Like, so we're very, very serious about this. Like, okay, we're approaching a left turn in 200 yards. You know, left turn 50 turn, left turn, left turn, left. You know, it's like very serious. We're cruising around with this Bradley crew, and we can hear their comms, and it's like, hey, where are we going? I don't know. I just follow that guy. Do we turn right or left up here? And we're like, at first, we're kind of like, man, we're gonna get ambushed. Yeah. And then it's like, wait a minute. We're with a column of like 6 or 7 M1A1 Abrams and like 10 Bradleys. Yeah. Like, we don't get ambushed. Like, this isn't World War II. Like, we're gonna like, you know, like, yeah.
That's funny.
So that was kind of cool. You know, just doing stuff with those guys. We'd like, you know, and we did a bunch of hits with those guys, and eventually it was like, it got pretty good to where they'd, you know, we'd have our BPs, and then they'd roll up and they'd all like turn at the same time, and then all the ramps would go down at the same time, and we're like, you know, storming the beaches, running down the ramps. That's awesome. Another cool thing with that we'd hear, you know, they're on their FLIR external to the target, and they're like, we see someone climbing the wall on the east side, and then you hear that 30 mil chain gun going. They're like, they're not climbing the wall anymore.
Yeah, the firepower with those things is
they're amazing.
It's extraordinary for sure. So after the 2 deployments to Iraq, then you spent the rest of your time all in Afghanistan, pretty much.
Yeah,
yeah. What was the time period where you shifted back over there? Was it like 07, 08?
No. Like like 04, we were back, or maybe even late 03, we were back in Afghanistan again.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, we basically we high-fived another unit in Baghdad there, and then it was like, yeah, you guys can stay out of this. Like, you guys don't need to be in Iraq right now. And so we were kind of relegated to Afghanistan, which was slow at the time. Definitely caused some morale issues with things being a little bit slower over there at the time. Yeah. And then things picked up, and it was like, you know, we really looked at it as like Afghanistan was the place where the guys were more serious about fighting.
Yeah. What would you say kind of led you to realize that, in terms of like, what were they exhibiting that made you think these dudes are fucking serious and for real?
I mean, targets where we're taking contact from 3 different cardinal directions, and AC-130, 105's going off, to the point, you know, this was before I was wearing Peltors, like I'm wearing bone phones, because I was team leader at the time, and it's like the 105s are hurting my ears because they're so close. So that's a lot of dudes that were, you know, that are coming after us there. Yeah. They seemed more willing to engage in the fight. It seemed like the Iraqis, or at least the Iraqis that we were dealing with, and I realized this isn't across the board, because some of the guys in the cities especially did a lot of good fighting, but a lot of the guys that we saw, you know, or at least the deployments I was on, they did not seem as serious or as willing to engage in a fight.
One thing that seems pretty consistent with a lot of guests that I've had on too is that the efficacy and discipline tactically that a lot of the enemy fighters in Afghanistan seem to possess sounds like it was of a higher caliber by comparison. Would you say that's a fair?
Yeah, I would say that a lot more of the Iraqis, they're farmers, you know, or mechanics or whatever, and then they either didn't like us or they got paid enough by people that didn't like us to take up arms, and then we pissed enough people off to where they actually didn't like us. Yeah. Whereas Afghanis, man, that's just they all fight. You know, I mean, you know, there's how many different ethnic groups within there. They all hate each other. I mean, even within their own tribes, you know, if you're not from the same family or the same clan, they hate you. Yeah. So, I mean, in some of these fighting positions, like, they were crushing the British there 100 plus years ago. Yeah. I mean, like, they have, you know, they just have more of a culture of fighting. Now, that being said, like, I haven't, the whole, you know, reading The Bear Went Over the Mountain, and what's the other, there's a couple of them that we read, and it was like always this, well, the Afghan warrior is this fierce guy, and it's like, I never saw that. Like, they were more willing to engage and fight, but I didn't see, you know, and they were very hard Like they can endure hardship very well, i.e. like not eat very much food and have a set of man jammies on and sandals in the snow and like not complain about it. So they were like hard on that level, but like as far as like good fighters that could, you know, shoot, move, and communicate, I didn't see that nearly as much.
Yeah. Was there any evidence from what you encountered there of a lot of foreign intervention, or some, like from some of the stuff that you heard, like Chechens?
Some, yeah, that's what I was going to say. We'd see like the Chechens, you know, like anytime we thought those guys were around, that was always like a big, okay, it's going to be on, because those guys were
next level, significantly
better fighters than, you know, your local Pashto guy.
What, were there times where for sure you mixed it up with them and crushed them and had evidence of it afterwards? Or
our guys did from time. I can't think of a time where it was like, yeah, these were definitely, you know, I mean, we had, you know, we changed some of the stuff we did after guys got in scrapes with those guys. Mm-hmm. Because, yeah, I mean, one of the things that they were doing was having string, basically a string harness underneath their shirts, wired directly into the pins on frag grenades. So all they had to do was reach into their armpits and pull and let go, and they'd blow themselves and you up. Right? Yeah. So there were some lessons learned from, you know, from that. So those guys definitely had a pretty high level of willingness.
Yeah. Were there instances during some of those later on and heavier traffic deployments where, I guess similarly to the question in Iraq, where you guys really got punched in the mouth and had to fucking regroup, or would you say that overwhelmingly you guys were successful?
Most of the time we would roll through, but I mean, there would be some times where we would just choose to leave. Like if it was built up area, we start taking a bunch of fire, and it's like, okay, what's the mission? The mission is to get this one dude that's still a couple houses this way. Does it make sense to fight our way through all this stuff, or do we just come back another night and get the guy? Yeah. I mean, and that, you know, that was another thing, like the tactical patience. You understand that, hey, we don't need to. This is the long war. I mean, this is the longest war the United States has been involved in ever now. Yeah. Like we've got guys going on so many deployments. You know, I mean, it's just, we don't need to. This is not the push, you know, through Iwo Jima. Yeah. Like, yeah. You know, it's like, it's not, hey, we'll be home by Christmas, guys. Yeah, we'll like wrap up the war by Christmas.
Yeah. Like that house has to be taken or we fail the war. Like,
no, yeah, it's not, you know, it's not a, you know, sometimes it's controlling pieces of infrastructure or pieces of terrain, but more often than not, it's like, who cares if they control that terrain? Like they can't actually, if they really fortify this terrain, we will, you know, like we can go, you know, I will see your kinetic, whatever kinetic solution you have, like I'll see you on that. Yeah. And raise you, flight F-18s. Yeah. You know?
No, for sure. Was there, at any point, specifically in Afghanistan, were there times where post-mission on target, where you guys came across things that were super cryptic or creepy or like, holy shit, you know, type of moments?
There was some weird, there was some weird stuff, like a tied up dead woman.
Really?
That, that it actually had gotten a pass-through shot. So like one of our guys, you know, had shot someone else and then shot her. So then the IO is, you guys shot a tied up woman. Yeah. It's like, no, she was dead for like a day, or she was dead for a while beforehand because they tied her because they hadn't buried her yet. And she's gonna, you know, like her body's gonna twist around, and they didn't want that to happen. Yeah. So her family had tied her and then she got shot. Wow. And then the IO was, you guys shot a cuffed local woman. Yeah. You know, which first off, she wasn't cuffed. Yeah. Like she was tied up with their own stuff, and she'd already been dead. Yeah. You know, but just like weird. Yeah. There's definitely some weird stuff that happens sometimes. Some weird, definitely up in the mountains in Konar. There's like some, I mean, there was people there that thought, like on our first deployment, there's people there that thought we were the Russians still.
Yeah.
too when they think we're the Russians.
Yeah, you think you're out of touch without a TV, right?
Yeah, no kidding.
Anything else that comes to mind that's just kind of interesting that way, of weird shit that you come in contact? To me, that was always some of the most fascinating things, is just seeing how other cultures live and some of the things you would come across in their house. But anything that kind of stands?
Just, they live in mud castles.
Yeah.
I mean, they're legitimate, big walls, parapets. I mean, it's castle towers, big gates. I mean, it's very feudal.
Yeah, for sure. Was there an operation throughout all of your missions in Afghanistan that stands out as being the busiest in terms of how long it took, the magnitude of the gunfight, KIAs on the enemy side, any casualties on your side? Like this one stands out as the pinnacle of what we do?
I think one of the ones where we, down in southern Afghanistan, it was a long infill, good route. We got in there, and
about what distance would you say?
10 plus K, 10 or 12 K was the infill. And then there was a lot of I remember we were walking due south the majority of the time, but there was a lot of boxing around farms and stuff like that. So did a good job of like staying quiet, getting in there. We get on target. The target itself wasn't so amazing. And then it just erupted around us. And it was just like, fire coming in from 3 different directions, AC-130 going hot, very, very close. It was pretty, all sorts of craziness going on. I mean, we exfilled during the daytime, which I didn't think was the greatest decision at the time. Like I thought it would have been better to just say, let's just keep walking, and we can walk for another 12 hours and then exfil the next day. Because when we brought birds in, like, I just remember where we were in the lead one, and we're up in the air, and we're seeing tracer fire just come up from all these different compounds. And I'm watching, and I couldn't tell if the tracer fire was ripping through the helo behind us or not. It was either directly in front or probably more behind, because I couldn't tell if it was going through it or not. I just remember, praying and then just watching our mini, all the door gunners just hammering, with their miniguns into all those compounds. Pretty amazing that we didn't lose anyone.
Did you finish the mission successfully, or like?
Yeah, I think we didn't kill a bunch of people on target. It was just one of those. I think we got the guy that we were going at, or no, we did not get the guy we were going after. But just in terms of like, it was a long way in, lots of ordnance dropped, lots of Mankey on the exfil, like all those things. I would say kind of stood out as I don't know, that stood out more to me than like missions where we got our guy.
Were there I'm curious, I guess, from a CQB standpoint, a lot of the training that you do back here and getting ready to go over there, were there any instances that it was kind of textbook that way? I know for me, the very first CQB, real world CQB that we did, when I contrast it to the God knows how many hours of training we had done to get ready for it, it was very different in terms of how we moved and how they moved, and it really made us think we need to train differently. But what I'm curious of is, were there missions that you went on where you personally, like, you went into a room and there's a fucking armed guy 7 feet away from you, and it's a gunfight at that distance?
So on the difference in training versus reality, we absolutely went through a big change, where from when we first started, we're like, this is how we do CQB, and by a few years later, it was completely different. And I always tell guys that, when I first came in the teams, it was, hey, these SOPs are written in blood, and that really wasn't the case. Like, there were some SOPs that were, but there was a lot of stuff that was just kind of made up. That seemed like the best thing to the guys that were doing it at the time. And then once people actually started shooting at us, it's like, no, you don't run through the door when people are shooting at you. If you're not getting shot at from the street, or, like, all other things being equal, like, you don't run through the door. Like, you stay outside. Distance is your friend. we almost always shoot better than bad guys do, and we have better technology. You know, so it's so a lot of stuff changed. So we went through this phase of like, obviously when people started shooting at you, and then guys aren't running through the door anymore. There was a phase of guys were getting called out for not running through the door with AK fire coming out of it, and you know, they were older guys that had more time vested in doing things the old way, and some of the more junior guys were like, why, like that guy saved his own life by not running through that door. And then within a few years we had changed completely to like, of course, if the guy's shooting through the door, you don't run in. Like why on earth would you do that? So yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that changed as we did this. And then, but by the time, we were, I don't know, by the mid 2000s, I would say it was very much the way we trained was the way we went overseas and fought. Like there was very, very little difference. Maybe some of the structures, doorways are smaller, stuff like that. So there were little tweaks that would happen, but it was very, very similar.
In terms of the second question of the face-to-face, kind of never had that happen.
All the dudes I got to blast were further away, like courtyard, or guys lighting me up down an alleyway, or running around with RPGs, stuff like that. Were there there was guys I got in fights with, like
physical
dealing,
fist fight,
like kneeing dudes and stuff, but not.
Or did you? I mean, what was your primary mode in terms of prisoner handling? Was there?
So we were coming off of still the whole, CQD thing. Like we, that had been SOP for a long time, but we were shifting away from that. And then there was a while where there wasn't a whole lot of SOP. It was just kind of like you just go in there and crush people, and get them cuffed.
Pick up a fucking lamp and hit them over the head with it. What can you share a story of going hands on with somebody and where you had to actually go that route?
So it was actually one of the first times that we humped in a ladder, and our friend Andy was with me on this, and so we put this ladder up, and it's typical. It was actually in a little bit of a built up village, but big castle walls, parapets. Guys shining a flashlight every 30 minutes or so from the top of the castle tower.
It's like a fucking Batman episode.
And so I'm like, man, I'm gonna be the first one up there. Like this is gonna be good. So I get up the top of the ladder, roll out. There's a dude sleeping with a shotgun right next to him, and he's his bed is outside, which is very, very common over there. He's got mosquito netting over it. So I wake him up, talking to him in Pashto, tell him, hey, surrender, like come here, turn around, all this stuff. Andy's right behind me. He sprints past me to go cover for where the assault's gonna happen. So I'm trying to get this guy to turn around, and he just locks onto the end of my suppressor. Right, I had a 10.5 inch at the time with a Reed Knight can on the thing, and he locks onto that thing, and I was just, by SOP, like I could pull out my pistol and shot him. And I just, this was still kind of transitional. Like we had a lot of bad intel at the time. So there was a lot of kind of, hey, give the guy the benefit of the doubt. Like we don't need to kill everyone we come in contact with. And so I just grabbed this guy, tie clinch, and I start dropping knees on him. I'm hammering him a bunch. He's yelling bloody murder. I throw him on the ground, and now he starts sprinting. And this dude is like, he's an older dude, but he's like a hard older dude. He's like shaved head, big beard. So we're thinking, in my mind, I'm thinking Chechen, and he keeps like trying to bring his hands into his armpits, which I talked earlier. Like that was something that we were worried about. So I'm trying to control his hands. I'm calling for a PC assist, which was, that was the hey, someone come up here and give me a hand cuffing this guy. And so while all this is going on, all of a sudden I hear clack, 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 and it's Andy smoking a dude that's coming up behind me with an AK.
Jesus.
And it's funny because in my mind, I remember thinking, son of a bitch, Andy, like Because I was like a year or 2 years ahead of him. So I'm like, I'm supposed to be shooting people. You know, like, and in my mind, I'm thinking like, okay, I could stand up and try and get in on the shooting. Yeah. But then this dude's going to grab a shotgun and kill me. So like, that's not an option right there. Yeah. But I distinctly remember that going through my mind while this is going on. Yeah. And so, you know, I end up cuffing him, or I think one of the guys came up the ladder, one of their blocking position guys came up the ladder. We ended up getting this guy cuffed, and like, it's actually like the next day I'm like, how are my knees so sore? Like I bruised my knees on the dude's face.
No shit.
Yeah.
And he absorbed all those and didn't.
He absorbed all. Yeah. Those dudes are hard.
Yeah.
Like in that way. Yeah. They're hard.
Did you find out who he was? No. I mean, no idea.
I think he got let go like a couple days later. Like. So, you know, they're so that's a trip. Strange times.
Yeah. Were there ever any instances where he choked anybody out?
Nope.
No. Any fucking arm bars or anything like that, or was it all strike type shit?
It would all be striking. Yeah. Like no.
Did you ever fucking pistol whip any, or I mean, weapon strike, muzzle strike something?
Yeah, muzzle struck some dudes.
Yeah.
SR-25 with a 16-inch SR-25 with a can on
kill
it.
Somebody with that. I mean, did it knock him out at least?
No, it honestly it was kind of weird. It was a melee. It was kind of, we were on a roof. There was a family sleeping on a roof, and they weren't even like part of our target. We were just on their roof to be able to look into another one, and they woke up and like we're going crazy. And so it's like, we're trying to be nice to these people, but then they're like biting our guys and like hanging on to them, and I'm like coming in and like doing exactly what I tell everyone now not to do. Like your muzzle strike it's a jab. It's you know, it's a quick right here. And you know, and I remember going like this.
You're starting the lawnmower.
Like I'm going all the way from up here and striking down like that. So yeah.
That's fucking funny. Throughout the entire deployment history, when was the first time that you incorporated canines into your missions?
Man. 05, 06-ish, something like that.
And what was your take? I'm assuming, I mean, just from being in the industry as long as I have, you know, it just like with most things, it starts out pretty rusty, and as they get their feet under them and get some experience and what have you, then they get better and better at augmenting and you know, supplementing the team, being an asset and not a liability. But what was your overall feel of the canines, generally speaking?
So the first time we had one, it was a regular Navy dog handler. And it was literally like that scene from, was it Platoon, where the guy's like, you don't need this, you don't need this, you don't need this, because we were dropping off a couple clicks away, and we were humping into the target, and we had to climb over walls, and we were hoisting the dog up one side and lowering him down the other side. And like, so this is day one for this guy. Yeah. We'd never trained with him stateside. Yeah. And it was basically just squirter control. Like, we hadn't quite figured that piece out yet. And so we're like, man, when these dudes that are all they're wearing is man jammies, and they can run faster than us, and they know the area. When we're dealing with those guys, like we want to be able to catch them, and the dog can catch them. Yeah. So we really liked it. I don't think that dog ended up getting used. Like, it wasn't, like, knowing what I know now, he wasn't that great of a dog. But then the program kind of matured from there, and we started getting, we recognized, hey, we have a need for this. We'd like to professionalize it more so than just ad hoc, a handler coming in from outside the organization. So then we stood up our own program and asked for volunteers that were already shooters, and for those guys to start running dogs. Got our first trainers in, and then it really just blew up from there, to the point where, like, it was, at first it was, we've got a couple dogs for the whole command, to, like, we've got 1 or 2 dogs, per operational element. Yeah. And man, there many times those dogs saved guys' lives. Yeah. Where, like, you're focused over here and you're pushing this way, and the dog's like alerts and goes that way. And it's hilarious. Like, in this particular one, inexperienced handler, like, he's trying to rope the dog with his laser, like, no, go over here. And the dog's like, nope.
Fuck you.
Like, this is where it is. And sure enough, like, hit a guy that was, the guys were patrolling up this way. They were on line pushing through. Dog hits a guy. To So those dogs are invaluable.
Yeah.
And we got to where we were using them almost everything. I mean, we jumped the dog. I mean, that's one of the coolest jumps I've done was 8,000 foot DZ. I've got a guy strapped, a real person strapped to me, and like an 80-pound dummy dog strapped to me with full O2 combat equipment, everything. We're getting out at like 18 MSL. Challenging jump.
That's a fucking trip, man.
But we just very much like we started incorporating them and you know, looking for kind of the super social dogs that aren't, you know, that like anyone can run, that aren't gonna, you know, bite their own guys. You know, like some of the coppers came from old school. Hey, you want a hard dog like that only you can control, and it's like, no, we don't want that dog. We want a dog that anyone here can grab and handle. And
that's always the tricky part, I think, is you know, and then for sure most people don't realize, I think, that are outside of the industry, I think most that are inside get it, but is that there is such a variance, and that I think, you know, most people assume that police dogs, military working dogs are that way, like that they're the old school, like 1960s sentry dogs that fucking their handler has to feed with a fucking catch pole type of thing. And where it's tricky, I think, is that, you know, and it stands to reason in that, you know, the type of dog that is physically capable, you know, of physically and mentally capable, and frankly genetically capable of defeating a grown man that's 4 or 5 times his size, that's not scared of him, that's intent on hurting him, that takes a pretty special dog to deal with a guy like that. And on top of that, that is also, you know, physically capable of dealing with that, but then is also social enough and amicable enough to be integrated into a unit where they're being shoved into a fucking helo at night, surrounded by dudes that isn't his handler, you know, with flashbangs going off and fucking hard banks. And I mean, that takes a pretty amazing fucking animal to do that, you know. But it's been neat to see the progression of where programs started and kind of where they're at now. But I do worry a little bit in that taking it a little too far on the amicability train, you know, where it's like you deal with it more, I think, in the police canine world, but where it's like, well, he's got to get along with my lab and the house and my kids and you know, it's like, you know, just like with everything, there's a happy medium. But
our dogs didn't go home like that when we first started the program. They did, because police canines go home normally. But that wasn't a good fit for just, you know, the guys are on the road, and then the guys are, you know, there's just, it's too many issues that happen when you do that.
It's a shit deal, because, you know, the bond is so important. You know, the magnitude and strength of the relationship between dog and handler is key, just like a marriage or a business partnership or, you know, family, you know, whatever is that. And with a dog, I would argue it's even more important, because you can't explain anything to them. And so, you know, just being at the house with the handler or you know, whoever he's going to be working with regularly is so crucial. But on the same token, you know, how many times does, you know, a police dog get in trouble because he's at his handler's house and the gate gets left open and the neighbor special needs kid, you know, in a wheelchair is rolling by and runs into him? You know, it's just a fucking mess, you know. So it's unfortunately necessary, I think, in a lot of instances where there is that separation there, which is unfortunate. But I would love, especially because of what I do for a living, as well as a lot of the listeners are pretty dog heavy, if there are a couple of dog missions that you can share where lives were saved and the dogs did some phenomenal shit, that would be awesome to walk us through.
I mean, we started bringing dogs on everything. So it was very much like, hey, if you thought, you know, if you thought there was issues in, you know, in a building, like, you would send the dog in. I mean, we got to the point where our guys would direct the dog, not even like the handler might be a couple doors back, and like the guys that are in the lead positions would deal with, you know, or would send the dogs in. But there was, I mean, dogs found, you know, buried explosives for us multiple times. Never on patrol in, but like on site doing searches on compounds.
Was there
I saw some guys do some amazing stuff to save their dogs. which was pretty, like some pretty heroic stuff. Like one of our guys, like twice in one night, like first time a guy was taking an axe to his dog and he dealt with him. And then the second time the dog went down a Carez system, right? That's their well systems that they used fighting the Russians and everything. And like they were chasing the dude down. Dog goes down there. He hears his dog losing, like no fear, just goes in there like by himself into this tunnel and takes care of this guy. Like,
that's fucking
pretty
awesome.
Yeah, pretty amazing. Like very, very heroic.
Yeah, man, that's cool. Bite wise, in terms of ambush neutralization, were there times where on patrol, I know the one time that you mentioned where the dog was focused on you know, the other direction and went in and handled a guy. Were there any other instances that come to mind that are good apprehension stories?
No, not really.
Or you just don't want to talk about it?
A little bit of both. I mean, the dogs are just, you know, they're so, you know, I mean, there's stories about dogs biting our own guys. Yeah. You know, that are funny, or you know, dogs almost biting the local worker. That's why, you know, we're sitting there getting ready to leave country, and like the local dude walks by, and it's like, and the handler just like barely saves him. Barely saves this guy from getting mauled. We always like, you know, that the dog, for the most part, the dogs liked us. And, you know, so I mean, it's funny on one of the, actually this is kind of funny because we were on this one target and we had this dog, and you know, I'm in Overwatch position. I hear this horrible scream, and then you look, and here's this dude running away, and here's the dog, and this is not a dog performing well, and the dog's just like nipping him, and the guy is screaming like he's dying. And you know, the dog had just kind of, the dog didn't go on any more missions after that. Like, we're like, we all really like this dog, but maybe this dog had gotten too social, like, because he was not taking his, you know, his apprehension seriously. He was just kind of tormenting this guy, and they ended up running this guy down and catching him. But like the dog really just scared the guy a lot.
Any other missions dog related that you're willing to mention?
No, I think that about covers it.
Covers it. In terms of the being back at you know, back at the base, if you will, wherever your forward operating base or wherever you're at, were there times where you guys would include the dogs in just kind of hanging out, or did you keep a pretty stark contrast of keeping them crated, kenneled, whatever? Or were there times where
the handlers would almost always, I mean, most of the time because we wanted the dogs to be socialized with our guys. So the dog would, you know, the dog is kenneled the majority of the time. Well, not even the majority of the time. Like anytime that the handler had to do anything, like the dog would normally be kenneled. But then like most of the guys would sleep with the dog in their room, not kenneled. You know, just that makes you feel a lot better. And then when they're just going around, like that, a lot of the guys would, you know, okay, I'm going to be deliberate about doing rounds and just like stopping into everyone's hut if it was a night that we weren't working. And they take the dog with them just so the dog sees everything. It's also, some of it's just continued training, right? Just environmental training. You go in the gym with the dog, and you know, guys are grappling. Okay, check. Like the dog sees that. Okay, this is cool. Like situationally, we're okay with this, and then let's go into the ready room, and let's go in. You know, like let the dog smell. Okay, a bunch of explosives in the ready room, and then move on here. You know, so yeah, there was a lot of that.
Were there instances on any gigs that you went on where dogs were lost?
No, none of the ones that I was on.
Yeah, that's good. I know, you know, some groups, some of the guys, for sure not as fortunate. But but yeah, I mean, obviously, like I could, you know, hear dog stories all day, but I get where you're coming from on it. So for the rest of your deployments until you got out, what year did you get out?
2014.
So from the rest of those 10 deployments, how did that kind of transpire in terms of, you know, between the politics and the ROEs and and just the feeling, both morale wise and your guys' perception of why you were there and what you were doing, how you were doing it, how it was going. How did that all kind of
ebbed and flowed?
Yeah.
I mean, there was times where very demoralized, like, what are we doing here? We're not serious about this at all. And there was times where, man, we had the right group of head shed, and it was just like, why aren't you out tonight?
Yeah.
Like, when that's coming from like the highest level in our organization, like, that's pretty good. Because I mean, there was a while where I'd say there was some risk averseness.
Yeah.
And then, close to 180 to that, like, hey, we're going. Like, there's a network here that we need to defeat, and we're going to get after it.
Yeah.
So that was very cool. I would say it was demoralizing for me when, due to changes within, leadership, presidential leadership, it changed from we're going after Islamic extremists to we're going after VEOs, violent extremist organizations. That bothered me a lot, because I'm like, if we can't even name who we're fighting, like, what are we doing? Mm-hmm. Like, during the Cold War, like, we're fighting communism. Like, the communists say this, and we're trying to counter that.
Yeah.
But with this, it was just this big shift of like saying, no, we don't. Like, we're just going to discard, like, them saying ISIS is un-Islamic.
Yeah.
Like, that's insane. They're extremely Islamic.
Yeah.
Like, that's motivating to them. Exactly. That's their motivation. That's their why they're doing this.
Yeah.
So that was very demotivating to me when, like, I'm a serious guy. Like, I want to be a part of serious stuff. And if we're not serious about fighting, then I don't really want to do that. So there's some of that. There's also some of, I got to be a part of a lot of cool stuff, and now I've got a family, and that's kind of that is the mission now.
Yeah. The big mission.
So there's some of that.
Would you say that the mentality or the feeling that you had in terms of being demoralizing, was that, would you say, pretty consistent across the board with the guys you were working with, or were your thoughts maybe?
At times, I think the whole, I don't know, the VEO thing, I don't know. I don't think that affected some of the other guys as much. Like, to me, that's a very, I don't know, I think about things, and it's like, that's,
what's the principle?
Words have meaning.
Yeah.
If we can't name who our enemy is, like, that's a big problem for me.
Yeah.
Like, also, I'm pretty extreme in my beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but so to me, that it's kind of easy to make a shift there of just going, okay, well, what, any extremists, like, all extremists are not the same. Like, I'm extreme in my believing that Christianity is correct. Yeah. Like, that doesn't hurt people.
Yeah.
Like, but if you just say all extremists are bad, like, that's not good.
Yeah.
Right there.
So in terms of the religion, I guess I'm curious, what role did that play in you doing what you did for a living as long as you did, if at all? I mean, was that, I know that it's the kind of bedrock principles that you live your life. Obviously, you can't separate what you do from a living from that, as well as especially doing that for a living. What are your thoughts on, for people that may be thinking, like, how do you, what's the word I'm looking for? Reconcile that, in terms of, fighting the way that you fight, and, being a Christian, and how that all kind of balances out?
That's a great question. And one that I've been asked many, many times.
Yeah. Well, it's not that great of a question.
Well, no, I mean, to include, like, at selection, or like at my interview to even attend selection, they said, oh, you're a Christian. Well, the Bible says thou shalt not kill. You're trying to go to a command where that might be asked of you. How do you reconcile that? And right away I said, well, number one, the ancient Hebrews had different words for killing, just like we do. Murder, different degrees of manslaughter. The Old Testament is full of examples of, if the axe head flies off and strikes a guy, it's one punishment. If it's a daytime break-in, it's another one. If it's a nighttime break-in, it's another one. There's all different things like that. If you can, the King James Bible is translated as thou shalt not kill. every other translation is thou shalt not murder, because the actual Hebrew word that is used is more often used in conjunction with describing murder than it is in terms of describing just a killing. So there's that, and then there's also David was a man after God's own heart, and they wrote songs about him, right? Saul is slain his thousands and David is tens of thousands. So I brought that up during the interview, and I'm like, I don't think that God is going to have a problem with me, doing the same thing. There's absolutely a difference between murder is I don't like you, or I want your car or whatever, and I'm going to kill you and take it. That's murdering someone. Or I'm just angry with you and I'm going to murder you. Killing in battle is killing in battle. There was times where I prayed for the people. I knew I'm looking at my watch. I'm like, they're 30 seconds out from a HIMARS strike. A bunch of these dudes are fixing to die, and I would pray for them. Yeah.
Was there ever any conflict, or was it very cut and dry?
No, very, very cut and dry. In fact, I would say that as I've, I teach full time now, and I talk about, hey, this is, it's all geared towards protecting yourself and your family. And that might involve you killing someone. So we talk about that. And it's a very serious thing, killing someone, but it is not necessarily a wrong thing, right? So it's important to draw that distinction. I think I erred on the side of maybe being too lackadaisical, too much high fives all the way around. Hey, this was not a big deal for me. I was happy the first time I shot someone, because I'm I've been trained to do this my whole life. Yeah. And now I've gotten to do it. Yeah. And I was happy. So I think it's a serious thing, but it's not the pop culture right now is that you should always feel bad, or the first time you get in a shooting, you vomit. And it's I don't know anyone that's done that. I don't know anyone that had a hard time shooting people. So no, really there was never any, never a conflict there. And the only thing that I would say that I've changed is as I talk about it now, I'm just hey, it is a serious thing, but it is not necessarily a thing that you should feel bad about. You could feel bad for the guy's family. Some guy's intent on robbing you and, hurting your family, something like that, and you kill the guy. You can feel bad for his family. You can have empathy for his family. He made a poor decision that ended up costing him his life and costing his family pain and sorrow and loss of income and a bunch of other stuff. So you can feel bad for his family. There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. But you shouldn't feel hey, I did something morally wrong because you didn't. Yeah. What's the alternative? You let this guy hurt your family?
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I guess, where I think, the black and whitedness, if you will, of a scenario where you're minding your business at home and somebody kicks your door in and tries to, slit your wife's throat, that's pretty cut and dry. Yeah. To me, where I'm curious kind of what your thought process is in terms of the amount of time that we've spent in Afghanistan. First question is, are there any instances where you took somebody's life where, looking back on it now, you either regret it or think you should have done it different, or just anything in that lane? And number two, from a justification standpoint on the United States' end in terms of being there, the way we've been there, as long as we've been there, how we've been there, et cetera. What are your just thoughts on that, generally speaking?
So, answer to question number one, no. I don't feel any regret for the people that I shot. There's more people that I wish I would have shot. There was times where, because we had investigations, I was gun shy and did not pull the trigger when I should have. One time in particular, we landed too close to the target. We climb up on the roof and I see guys acting in a combative manner. They're hiding behind a vehicle. They're poking up and then popping back down again. But we'd had a bunch of investigations on us. We're Overwatch. We're recce guys. We're shooting people almost on a nightly basis. Yeah. So because of that, I did not shoot these guys. I didn't see weapons at first, but they're definitely acting like they're in the fight. About 2 minutes later, can't say 100% they were the same two guys. From that same location, however, two dudes, one guy running with an RPG on his shoulder, the other guy with like 3 or 4 RPGs underneath his arm. They go sprinting across. There's a little bit of an open area. I probably had 7 to 10 yards to make the shots. I clipped one dude in the head. Pretty sure I hit the other guy, but we never found the other dude. Fortunately, nothing bad happened because of the hesitation on my part, but looking back on that, like those guys were in the fight. I should have engaged them beforehand. Yeah. Same thing. I had another time where like I saw a guy trying to backlight me and I couldn't tell what he was doing. I didn't know he was, his head was really close to the ground and he was trying to put me against the sky so he could see. It was super dark night. And I could see what he was doing. I couldn't see that he had a PK machine gun right in front of him until he lit me up with a thing, yeah. And after that, fool me once. After that, we saw dudes doing that, poking their head around stuff. Like when we're in the fight, like they got shot.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So, sorry, what was the second part of the question?
Well, actually, before I'll refresh that one here in a second. I am curious. The answer to the first one made me think of the scenario with Andy. Were there instances where the roles were reversed, where you found yourself in a situation where angle-wise you were in a position to drop somebody that was getting ready to hurt one of our guys?
No, it was mostly like dudes, dudes maneuvering, guys starting shooting at you, guys rolling out of their beds grabbing AKs. And I felt like we were doing our job right if that was the case. Like, yeah. Like they're all sleeping. You get the Turpin, hey guys, surrender. And they jump up and they start to grab their stuff and they all get burned down. Yeah. Like that's, I feel like we're doing our job correctly if that's how it's going down.
If you give them the opportunity to not fight and they don't take it.
Yeah.
Yeah. The second question was kind of big picture, macro, 30,000 foot view of Afghanistan as a whole, as it relates to the kind of the morale or the moral question of, making the distinction between somebody breaking into your house, but then also, fighting on behalf of the United States, and you personally, where you see our nation as it relates to being in the war on terror and how we've done it, why we've done it, how long we've done it, where we've done it, our ROEs, kind of the big picture wise, like, to me at this point, there's things that I can look back on, in terms of good friends of mine / ours that are now gone because of it. If it's worth it, what are we still doing there? Should we still be there? Those types of kind of big picture, not so black and white questions to answer in terms of how you feel about what we're doing there.
Yeah, that stuff is definitely harder to answer. I do think it was the right thing going over there. I don't think nation building was the right thing. I don't think trying to install democracy into a country that has never done democracy and their people are not ready for democracy or republic, like that's not the right thing to do. Like I think as a national policy, we should support countries that are very secular in their Islam. And basically, so I would have been good with after, a year or two. I mean, when we first rolled into Afghanistan, we crushed everyone. They had, an ODA team shows up on the top of a hill and like tens of thousands of dudes in tanks are fleeing before them, because we did what the American military does best, and that's just go in and crush everyone. We don't do nation building very well. And I don't think we don't have the cultural understanding. We don't have the patience, tactical patience to do that stuff. I think Eric Prince has some great ideas as far as like, the British East India model of like, hey, put a viceroy in there. Like I think that has been a huge problem we have this massive turnover. Like you get a new general in there every 12 to 18 months. And the first few months he's figuring out what he's doing. The last few months he wants to make sure that he doesn't cause any waves before he leaves. Yeah. And so he's got a very limited window of time to do something. And if his vision is different from his predecessor's vision, like there's no trust that's built up between people. It's a big problem. I think we should have, we should leave a small contingent of forces there, continue to, and basically support a secular Islamic government and just say, hey, here's the deal. If you allow Al Qaeda or ISIS now, or you know, the Taliban to regroup to any level where they have, you know, targeting ability outside of the nation, then we're going to come back in and crush everyone again. Because I mean, we lost almost no one on the initial invasion. I remember when Johnny Spann was killed, the CIA guy, up in Mazar-e Sharif, like that was a national thing. Like everyone knew who his name was. It was a big deal. When the first couple guys got killed, like that was a big deal. And then we got to a point where we're losing a couple dudes a day, and like no one even, what? We're still fighting in Afghanistan? Like no one even remembers. Yeah. So I think that the U.S. military should be used for doing what it does, which is go in and crush things. And then policy-wise, we should be supporting people that are the secular Islamic governments.
What is there a nation in the region that you feel sets the best example of that? To me, it's Jordan. I don't know. They seem the most even.
Yeah, they're very. Yeah, they would be. Yeah, I mean, and they've traditionally had the best ties with Israel as well. You know, Egypt at points in time, but I mean, like even Libya. Like, you know, as a nation, why did we support getting rid of Gaddafi? Like Gaddafi did horrible stuff. I'm not a proponent of his, but yeah, he was very secular.
Yeah, the vacuum is worse,
and Libya is worse now because he's gone.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
you could, yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue.
And you could make that argument with Iraq as well. Like, but at the time, we all thought Saddam was in cahoots with Al Qaeda.
Yeah,
or at least that was my understanding. That's what, you know, all the briefs that we received was that somehow they're in cahoots, and like there's gonna be some transfer of weapons going on right there.
So I guess, you know, that's what makes me think, from, you know, thinking of the more morality question of it, you know, is that whether it's Iraq or even Afghanistan, being there kind of past where even, and I would agree with you, like where we kind of, hate to use the word wore out our welcome, but, you know, probably shouldn't have been there, and yet are still there, mixing it up with guys and ultimately killing them. You know, for me to try to be as non-biased, even-keeled, and devil's advocate as I can be, because I do think it's important to not live in an echo chamber and just accept every fucking thing that our country does or what have you, is that I think of instances, say, where China, you know, decides they want to put a fucking massive Air Force base 15 miles south of Tijuana in Mexico, you know, and they have a deal with the TJ government or the Mexican government, and everything's cool, and they do that. Like, I'm pretty sure we'd have a big fucking problem with that. You know, or even taking it a step further, let's say China decides, you know what, this whole Judeo-Christian government democracy really isn't working for us. We think a communist Buddhist-based government, or, you know, what have you, would far better serve our nation's interests. We're going to go ahead and topple your government because we think you're fucking evil. And, you know, like, rest assured, you and I'd be two hooded assholes running around fighting them, right? So in that regard, like, it's hard for me not to think, at least to a certain extent, and again, I'm not disagreeing with what we've done or whatever, but I do think, you know, as warriors in the garden now, so to speak, I think that it's important to ask ourselves those questions and try to hold our entire nation accountable and you know, make those better decisions. Because, you know, for me, it's impossible to separate the fact that guys like Jason Freewald and Matt Mills and guys that were good friends of mine that were at that same command that are now dead, having fought those wars. You know, and I find myself often asking, was their life worth what's going on there now? And to me, like, if I'm being honest with myself and just trying to say, you know, all other things aside, you know, casting away anybody's feelings or you know, even family members being pissed to hear that, like, to me, no. Like, to me, I don't think those guys' lives are worth where we're at in that country right now. That's just how I feel about it. But I'm curious, you know, what you, having spent as many years as you did there, how do you feel about it?
I mean, I think we've made a lot of mistakes. I think, like, policy-wise, I wish we had way more clarity. I think we want, as America, it's like we want the big win, right? We want the World War II. You know, we bombed Japan, and they make cars for us. You know, same thing with Germany. You know,
good goddamn cars, by the way.
Yes, good cars. You know, and they've actually become our allies now, our friends and allies. But like, we did total war on them. Like, we crushed them to the point where their fighting spirit was gone. We didn't do that ever with any of the Islamic countries. We didn't do that. To some extent, I think with the problem with, you know, radical Islam is, you know, we need to take the approach of it's not going away. We need to mow the grass. Like, it's going to be, we're going to crush them, and then we're wait a few years and we're going to crush them again. We'll wait a few years and we're going to crush them again. And that's just like the way it goes. But I think that should be if you looked at it from that policy, like you know, none of those, you know, Millsy and Jason, like, they would have signed up for that. Yeah. Like, I mean, we all would have signed up for, you're gonna, we're gonna go do that stuff. Like, those guys wanted to do that. Yeah, no, I mean, we for sure all signed up for it and knew what we were getting into. I guess that just, you know, for me, it's hard not to look at it from the standpoint of still, you know, is like, I think, at least for me, I know, like, I'm happy to put myself in a position where the likelihood of me not coming back is significant, provided the outcome is worth it, you know. And to me, that's where I struggle with me personally. Granted, I've been out for as long as I was in now at this point. You know, I'm right at that sweet spot of having been out as long as I was in. And for sure, you know, my perspective has evolved over the years in terms of how I feel about what we do, how we do it, who's in charge and whatever. And it's hard for me to not become bitter, cynical, disenfranchised when I see the people who are deciding who guys like, you know, Matt and Jason, where they go and how they do it, and just how fucking terrible of people that they are. It's hard for me to give them that benefit of the doubt that they made the right fucking call. Yeah. At any rate, you know, if there's anything you want to add to that, I guess. No, I mean, I guess I look at it as we're all flawed. Like, those, you know, the politicians that are making poor decisions, like, unfortunately, a lot of times we won't even give them the benefit of the doubt of, like, hey, they're doing it good nature. To some extent, they're doing it good nature. To some extent, they're doing it for their own personal benefit. And that's unfortunate, but that's the world we live in. Yeah. Like, that's been going on for as long as there's been government. Like, there's been guys that are, you know, they're making money, you know, their kids aren't serving, or they're serving in a certain capacity that ensures their safety. Yeah. And, you know, and they're enriching themselves. And that's just like, I mean, name any kingdom where that hasn't happened, or, you know. No, for sure. So it's like, it's one of those, I guess I look at it, you know, like, I went through a period of time in the service where I was disenfranchised with stuff, and it's because I was focusing on, man, this sucks, and this sucks. And then after, and I almost punched because of that. And then I got to a point, I was like, you know what? Most of my job is pretty cool. I get to do some cool stuff. I get to hang out with good dudes. They give me cool kit. I get to shoot a lot. I get to fight. Like, I get to do all this cool stuff. That's probably 85% of it. And there's 15% of stuff that just I disagree with very, very, very strongly. Once I broke it down like that, I was like, you know what? The stuff that comes up that I disagree with, I'm going to make an attempt to change it. And if I can't change it, I'm just going to lump it into, that's the 15%. I'm going to focus on the 85% of stuff that I can have an impact on. And I'm going to Charlie Mike, right? Continue mission along that. As soon as I did that, and my outlook on things was so much better. Like, oh, you got to get a haircut. Okay, sure, whatever. Like, that's the 15%, doesn't matter. Yeah. So I would put, unless I'm willing to step up to, you know, run for office, like, which I have no desire to do. Yeah. That fits into the 15% of stuff that honestly I can't do a whole lot about. Yeah. I think that's part of the problem, is that the people that should be leading the country have no desire to do it because of everything that comes along with it. And I truly believe that most people that desire higher public office,
that in and of itself should automatically fucking disqualify you.
Yeah.
You know, because there's something wrong with you. Like there's a reason you want to put you and your family through that's not good, you know, and the fact that none of them go there poorer than when they showed up, and it's always a 5x, 10x, 100x net worth, you know, after even just a few years of serving at Congress or higher level, tells you everything you need to know about how fucked up it is. But I know what your answer would be as a 9/12/2001 President Rapier. What I am curious is President 44, right? Let's say it's President Rapier, November of 2008, or, you know, January of 2009. Then what do you do? We've crushed them. Do you bag ass out and pull chalks on both countries, or go full bore, gloves off, post World War II?
I think at that point it's time to leave. Like leave a small contingent there, prop up our guy, you know, and don't even go through the sham of, hey, this is a free and fair election. Who cares? Like, this is their country. If they want free and fair elections, they can fight for that. Like, we're going to pick our guy that has support, and he's in charge. As long as he stays in charge and keeps the Islamists, the hardcore Islamists at bay, we'll support him. And we keep a low-level presence there, you know, for you know, both mill and financial aid. And then if that guy either gets overthrown or becomes, you know, allowant of the radicals to taking sanctuary in their place, we just roll back through and we crush them again. And, you know, I mean, that would be way cheaper in terms of blood and treasure for the United States than what we're currently doing. Yeah. We're just we want to go in, we want that big win instead of just going, nope, mow the grass.
I also think from a consequence standpoint, I try in every episode to make one dog analogy, and I managed to do it on this in this instance. I think is that consequence is the best teacher for animals, and most people hear consequence and they automatically assume it's negative. Consequence can be positive too. A reward is a positive consequence of an action or a behavior. I think that making that very black and white contrast of, as long as you stay in line, we're out of your fucking hair. As soon as you step over that line, you get not just fucked with, but you get completely knocked off your fucking feet. And as soon as that's done, we leave again. You know, to me, just like with dog training, is that, you know, I'll use a leash as an example. You know, dogs pulling on a leash. What most people do is they're playing tug of war with the dog. They'll put a harness on them, which gives them the ability to pull even harder. And they cat and mouse and tit for tat for the rest of the dog's goddamn life, and can't ever get them to not pull on a leash. Whereas if you provide an incentive, i.e. a food or a reward or a toy for healing the right way, and a correction for healing the wrong way, and just make it very contrasted that way, they figure that out very quick. And I think that's essentially what's happened in both countries, is that we've cat and moused it and had just one foot in the entire time, and you know, done just enough to be a pain in the ass, but not completely dissuade them from wanting to fight. To where we've prolonged and made it actually worse on ourselves for 2 decades now. But you know, you could have that you know, I guess discussion, you know, till you're blue in the face, and it's always easier to you know, hindsight's 20/20 take approach. But one question I am curious, in terms of some of the generals here in the last couple of years that have been pretty outspoken of Trump, and also of just kind of what certain things that I guess I'm unpleasantly surprised at some of the positions they've taken, namely McRaven and McChrystal. Do you have any thoughts on either of those guys, and kind of what they've been putting out in the, you know, writing op-eds and shit like that, and some of the stances they've taken?
Yeah, I mean, I would not necessarily say that we can disagree. I mean, like you should be able to disagree in a republic. When you're at that level of leadership, I don't know if attacking the president is a great idea. I think with both of those guys, their idea of what our republic should look like is different from what my idea of what, you know, I believe in, you know, personal responsibility, and I don't think the government should be in charge of everything cradle to grave. It's equal opportunity, not equal outcome. And I think both of those guys lean more on the side of big government, more statist, more control type stuff.
Do you think that, I think most people that are outside of military communities or what have you that are listening would probably, and even myself, you would think that, you know, an Admiral SEAL and an Admiral Special Forces guy would have a more paralleled, linear perspective on things at the same way a lot of the guys from the community, and they don't. I would say most guys that are of the sled dog, you know, regiment, if you will, you know, within the communities have a pretty similar outlook on and would agree, you know, in parallel what your perspective is and mine as well. I have my thoughts. I'll ask you what yours are first in terms of why guys at that level, even from such a small and tight-knit community such as the Special Operations community, have such a different viewpoint, you know, in terms of how the Republic should be run and what it looks like. Why do you suppose that is?
I mean, some of this is just, you know, an educated guess. Like I haven't sat down and talked with those guys. Hey, why are you taking these much more leftist positions than pretty much all of your guys would, you know, would take? What, you know, so. But there are things that work for the military, like, you know, some of the senior officers are more pro gun control, and it sounds reasonable that like everyone should have to have training in order to own a firearm. Like in the military, of course, you have to have training before you're entrusted with a firearm. In my family, you have to have training before you're entrusted with a firearm. As soon as we make that a state level policy or a national level policy, we're immediately means testing. We're saying that, hey, only the people that can afford to get this type of training can own a firearm. And so immediately we cut out a massive swath of people that can do that. So I think sometimes those guys look at it and they go, well, they were in the military for so long that this works on a military level. Like, of course I would not allow, you know, a private or a seaman that's never done any, you know, he's never run a 240, and I'm just gonna, here you go, have fun. Yeah. Like, we'll see you at the end of the day. Like, of course you don't do that. You provide them training, you're responsible. But, you know, dangerous freedom or peaceful slavery, like part of, I mean, that's enshrined in our Bill of Rights, right? We are guaranteed the right to keep and bear arms, and that's a, like, it's not, yeah, you're allowed to have it, but you have to have training in order to have it. You know, it's not caveated at all. Yeah. Therefore, like, stop messing with it, right? Yeah. Like, so it's even if that means like some people are gonna be stupid and AD at home and hurt themselves or someone else, like, that's on you. Yeah. Like, that's personal responsibility.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's the same as vehicles, right? I mean, if you lowered the speed limit to 10 miles an hour, you know, you'd save tens of thousands of lives every year that don't die in auto accidents. But the downside of what that would create in terms of crippling our economy from a trucking standpoint and you know, the efficiency of people moving around the way that they do, it is not worth, you know, that. And to me, it's kind of that same thing. It's that, you know, big boy rules, you know, is that with
personal responsibility.
Yeah, with great freedom comes great responsibility. Yep. And unfortunately, they don't see it that way. You know, my take is, I think just like, you know, usually the higher up folks get in our communities, and I would even say military wide, is that they be just like a CEO of McDonald's. Like, he absolutely cannot relate to the guy that's dunking fries in a fucking hot oil jacuzzi. Like, he does not know what it's like to be that guy, and it's been so long since he was that guy that he doesn't,
for a lot of those guys.
Ever. But you know, specifically in the military, like, from our communities, like, those guys were in platoons, like, you know, they were with units, whatever, like they've been there at least a little bit. But I think it's been so long since they've been there, and they're so far removed, you know, and they're so surrounded by that same mentality in every other aspect of their life for so long that they become a product of their environment that way, unfortunately. But
yeah, I mean, the guy, I forget which admiral general it was, but, you know, a lady was killing a working dog, and he shot her. Mm-hmm. And, like, to the force, you know, you've lost your moral compass. Like, what's going to happen if you're out here in Dallas and you go stab some police canine? Yeah. You're going to get shot immediately. Yeah. Like, we're in a war zone, and you're telling us we can't do the same thing in a war zone? Like,
Yeah, it's crazy.
You know, that's crazy. And that was that was ROE at the time. That was, the dog was declared a member of the force, you know, like, yeah. You know, and he's berating us for within his own rules that he signed off on.
Yeah. Wow. When was this?
Oh, late 2000s, I want to say.
So there was a woman combatant that was trying to kill her.
She was stabbing the dog.
Yeah.
And dude came in and shot her.
Yeah.
And that caused a huge deal.
Man, dog all right?
My understanding was, yeah, the dog was saved.
I know I asked about any dogs lost. Were any missions that you on any of your guys ended up getting killed?
No.
That's pretty impressive.
Pretty amazing, yeah. I mean,
considering how long you were there, you know.
We had some guys wounded, but never.
Yeah. Were you ever wounded?
Never was.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you have a tracheotomy?
I did.
What, can you tell that story, or is that totally unrelated?
It's very secret. No, it's.
So no shit. There I was hanging a clock on my.
I was about 9 months old, and I had this thing called croup.
Oh no shit!
Which is a respiratory illness, and the doctors gave me a trach, cut me open right here. I had it was actually silver at the time. It was a metal. I had a metal tube in there for about a year.
Wow.
Yeah.
There are so many fucking way cooler stories.
I know, it's so like, yeah, I know.
Yeah, so I'm on a rooftop.
There I was.
Yeah. This throwing star gets flung out of a window and hits me right in the neck. All right, so in terms of your transition out, I know you talked about, you know, the family now is the big mission, and you know, you're living off the grid. I'd like to talk a little bit about kind of how you transitioned out, what you have going now, both business and personal, with how you live, because it is for sure not common. You know, it's very unlike what most people do, in I think in a very admirable and cool way. So talk a little bit about, you know, when you got out, how you decided to do that, and what that looked like, and then transitioning out and starting your own company.
So we retired June of 2014.
We retired.
Well,
we were pregnant.
I would say yes. To some extent, it is we. You know, she. If she was not doing what she's doing, then I probably wouldn't be doing what I'm doing right now. I mean, there's a lot of we there. Started AMTAC Shooting, or at the time we were still calling the full name is American Tactical Shooting Instruction LLC. Since then, we've got a doing business as AMTAC Shooting, because everyone just started calling it that. And so we rolled into that. So started doing that, and really wasn't sure kind of where am I going to be teaching, mostly LE, mostly MIL, civilians, started with a couple MIL classes or a couple LE classes, and then kind of the business slowly grew. And now we probably do, I don't know, 75–80% of our guys are civilians. And it's you know, I get this especially from team guys. They're like, who are these guys that train? And they're good dudes. They're like
all walks of life.
They're all walks of life. They're, you know, professionals, everything from farriers to guys in banking to, I mean, like, to you name it, construction dudes to IT guys, like, we get it all. And they're serious about protecting themselves and their family. And so they, like, this is their thing. You know, they carry a gun, they shoot. A lot of my students shoot a pistol better than a lot of my former teammates do.
No shit.
Yeah, so they're legit. They can run their blasters well. And they're just that's their thing. They're into doing that. So, you know, I go all over the country and I put classes on, and we don't put on fatigues and body armor and all that stuff. We you know, the majority of the classes I do are pistol and pistol combatives classes. So it's everything from concealment. You know, how do you roll every day? Like, don't bring your 2011 race pistol. Like, bring the thing that you carry, and we're going to learn how to shoot the thing better, but then also how do we fight? And then, because it's not always just drawing and shooting. It might start with you get punched in the face a couple times and pushed back, and then you're like, oh wow, that's a knife in that guy's hand. So now how do you deal with that? How do you start smashing him, stop yourself from getting stabbed, and then either stab him first, right? If my right hand is busy, my left hand is pulling a blade out. If my left hand is busy, my right hand's pulling a gun out.
In terms of the students, is there any protocol in place, or even if it has to be a hypothetical, like background checks of the people that you're training, any type of microscope that you put on potential, or attending students in terms of like?
Yeah, we do have a policy in place that if you sign up, we're allowed to do background checks on you. I don't advertise, so like overwhelmingly, it's all word of mouth.
Yeah.
The courses are not the cheapest courses out there, and I put in there, hey, you need to be, this is a physically demanding course. Like you need to be in shape, have a baseline level of fitness to participate.
Don't be a pussy.
And doing stuff like that, it eliminates like the wannabe commandos, the guys that, want to put on all their camouflage stuff and, and go out and like, I don't get those guys. Like I get the dudes that are serious. Like they're guys that you would hang out with, that you would enjoy like grabbing dinner with.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel very blessed to have just a good, and this is like, I've made so many friends through training now. Like probably half the locations I go to now, I stay with friends. Like, I don't even stay in a hotel. Like dudes pick me up at the airport and I go hang out at their house and like then go teach. And it's just like a good, like I'm very deliberate about what I call the social aspect of it. Like, tribe building. Yeah. So I invite off of 2-day classes at the end of day one. I'm like, all right, guys, where are we going to dinner? Like, let's go out and grab some chow. And like, relationships don't just happen. And, so I've made a bunch of friends, and then a lot of my students have made friends with other students, and it's a good, it's a really cool dynamic. Yeah.
I guess in the hypothetical, again, there's always people that want to pick apart, former military guys teaching, things to civilians, whatever. Like in the instant, again, hypothetical instant where like somebody showed up, they passed the background check, but it's like, man, this dude seems fucking off. Like, I don't feel good about this. Like, let's say you ran into that. I mean, is that something?
I'll kick him out. Like, it's just say, sorry, dude, like you need to leave. Yeah. I mean, I'll give you your money back, or maybe I won't, or whatever. But like, it's
I'm going to take your deposit.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't had to deal with that yet. I've had one guy that was unsafe and he was counseled on it. He was an older guy, was totally out of his element. And he kind of had this grin, like I almost kicked him out. And then I kind of started reading him a little bit. Like he actually started to show me what he was doing wrong by starting to pull his pistol out with me in front of him. Yeah. And so I immediately check his gun hand. I'm like, stop what you're doing. And it was very cold. He was not dressed for it. He had very old equipment. He'd never done anything like this before. And some guys, they grin when they're like nervous. Like that's what was going on with this guy. Yeah. And so, we talked for a while, and like he got back up on the line, was able, I put him on the far left side. So he was, not going to sweep people. And we were able to work through it, and he was able to still get some training out of it. But that's kind of not my normal. My normal demographic is like guys, anywhere from late 20s to like mid 50s that like to train. Like this is their thing.
Yeah. Like past hobby, and it's kind of a pastime kind of thing.
Yeah, they just, I mean, guys will travel now. They'll be like, oh, you're teaching in Arizona next month. Like I've got that time off. Like I'll fly in there and train with you. Cool. Like, so it's a cool, it's a cool dynamic.
What all courses do you offer?
So on the pistol side of things, the first course we did was called the Responsible Armed Citizen course. That is primarily a pistol fundamentals course with a intro to combatives block and mindset. We do mindset every single class I do, because it is the most important thing. You could be the best dude with your shooter. You could be the best fighter on the planet. If you've never thought through when you're willing to go to guns, why are you willing to go to guns? You're setting yourself up for a significant decrease in quality of life, i.e. going to jail. So Responsible Armed Citizen was the first one. Then we started doing the Integrated Combatives course. Integrated Combatives has, morning of pistol fundamentals and then a bunch of blade stuff. Hey, this is because the blade is a massive force multiplier. So we do a bunch of blade targeting, blade deployments, and it's all done left hand, or what we would call other strong hand, because words have meaning, right? Another thing from Sayat Kali. And then we'll start doing a bunch of striking, throwing elbows, throwing headbutts, throwing knees, staying on your feet. How do you get up when you do fall down? Like all those things. And we start combining it. So it becomes that. And that's truly the integrated part of it. So I can go from striking and then I'm pushing you back and I'm pulling my pistol out, or I'm striking and I'm, stopping your gun hand and I'm pulling the blade out. So it could be any of those things. And then I like to do stress courses in a lot of the classes. So it's basically a stress course. I mean, number one, there's Huya, they're cool things to do. But number two, they show guys where their level of unconscious competence is, right? So when we start off, for the guys that aren't familiar with this, we all start off with unconscious incompetence. You don't know that you don't know anything. Mm-hmm. And then you train for a little bit and you're like, wow, there's this whole world out there that I know nothing about. That would be,
I'm terrible.
Yeah. That would be conscious incompetence. Then you keep training for a while and you're like, okay, if I really focus on that front sight and I squeeze the trigger, squeeze, bang, wow, it worked.
Yeah.
That would be conscious competence. What we want to get to is the conscious decision is that guy needs to get shot, bang. Everything, the conscious decision was making the decision to do it. Everything else happened unconsciously or subconsciously. So when we do stress courses, we combine a bunch of things, high heart rate, some, smashing tie pads and, sprinting and then running around and shooting. And it combines things you don't normally do. And peer pressure, guys are watching you, right? Guys do this one at a time. And it will show you where your level of unconscious competence is. So that's the integrated combatives course. And the next one we started doing was force on force. And a lot of this stuff comes from students going, hey man, it would be cool if we could, can we pressurize this? Can we do this? And then I'll think about it for a while and go, okay, how can we do this? And how do we change the flavor of this and still really make sure guys are walking away with a quality product? So we got a force on force class where we still do pistol fundamentals, because you know what, you're never too amazing to do pistol fundamentals. Like we all need to do that. But then we do we just use airsoft pistols, and we do a lot of what we call situational drills where, okay, you're in this, I'll explain to you, you're in this position, close your eyes, go. And then it's on. You're shooting, not shooting, moving, not moving, like all those things. And what we're trying to get is pattern recognition. And pattern recognition is how we're able to make complex decisions very, very fast. It's because we've already thought about it. Or we can go, oh, this fits into this category, do this. Oh, this fits into this category, do this. Because the patterns of violence can be very similar at times if you can pattern recognize. Yeah. So that's the force on force course. Then we do a low light tactics course now as well, where I think the statistic is like 60% of shootings happen after dark, but no one ever trains at nighttime. Yeah. So this course we show up at like 12:30 and we shoot a 3-4 hour block in daylight, take a dinner class, and then we shoot at nighttime. We do the same drills. And so we do a bunch of pistol drills with a flashlight in hand and with a weapons mounted light. Yeah. And then you see, okay, man, if my family's life is on the line, I'd much rather have a weapons mounted light. Yeah. Yeah. That's a low light tactics course. And the new for this year is the low visibility pistol combatives course, which is basically, what do you do if you can't carry the normal size pistol that you do? Like I carry a full size pistol everywhere I go and I dress for it. But what if I can't do that either, or you can't do that because of your job? Hey, I'm gonna get fired if I print at all. So therefore you have to take extra steps to conceal, and you're probably carrying a smaller pistol. So this whole course is gonna be around that. Like I'm gonna have dudes lined up at the beginning of the course and look, hey, can I see anything about can I see any of your tools? Yeah. And if I can, why? Because this is a low vis course. Yeah. I shouldn't be able to see any of it. Yeah.
Why does it look like you have saran wrap around your waist?
Yep. So that's all on the pistol side of things. I do a couple different flavors of carbine courses. I do combative carbine, where it's carbine fundamentals, and then how do we fight with a carbine in our hand? Because again, if I only teach you how to do this, right, pull the trigger for those that are not watching. If that's the only thing that I teach you how to do, then man, I'm the guy that says, hey, here's a hammer, everything's a nail. Yeah. Right? Whereas that is not, default should not be shooting people. Yeah. Default should be smashing people if we have to. Yeah. So teaching guys to fight with a carbine, that's part of that. Then we do a hybrid carbine course, which is kind of like a cross between some carbine fundamentals, but then with a scoped rifle, with these new low variable power optics that they have, LVPOs. I run a Vortex HD3 1 to 10. It's amazing. It's a 1 power or a 10 power or anything in between with a first focal plane drop down reticle. I wish I would have had that when I was a recce guy, because it is such a good piece of glass.
What does that cost?
Like $3,000.
No shit.
They are crazy expensive.
But worth it.
But I mean, to have a gun that, like, I'm no slower with that up close than I am with a red dot.
Yeah. Wow.
And I can crank that up and shoot 500 to 700 yards, no problem.
Yeah,
like that's a pretty amazing capability right there. So we do a class for that. We do a precision rifle class where we go out and shoot distance. I do once a year. I do a night vision class where we do 3 days of day into night, but then the nighttime is with goggles on. We do some invite only stuff where it's, you know, heavy on the environmentals. We just got done with our winter advanced modern Minuteman course where we go snowmobiling, skiing, medium distance shooting.
I noticed I didn't get the invite on that, Bill. What happened?
It's because you brought up using snowshoes.
You're automatically disqualified.
It's AT skis are on the gear list. And you're welcome next year.
I wouldn't. I'd be fucking totally out of my element. I'd love to do it though. It sounds awesome.
Yeah. So we do a big variety of courses is kind of what it boils down to.
And where do you have a website that people can find out schedule and all that?
AMTACshooting.com has all of our upcoming courses, or almost everything. There's a couple more that are going to go up this year.
Awesome. And in terms of the blades, talk about the blade, because you own a blade company as well, right?
Yes. So about three and a half years ago, I was having a conversation with one of my buddies who we call him Northman Actual. His nickname is the Northman. Yeah. And we're saying, man, wouldn't it be nice to have a fixed blade knife that fits in your pocket? And we kind of talked through, like, we're all carrying folders, but folders, you know, what's your draw stroke on your folder look like when you're getting pushed backwards and punched in the face, right? Probably suboptimal. Plus they're more complex, they're hard to make, they're more likely to fail. So we talked about it, and then I didn't think anything of it. And then a couple weeks later, a blade showed up with with kind of the first iteration of the pocket sheath and all this stuff. And then there was more feedback given, and that probably happened another dozen times of just back and forth. And we got to a point where I'm just like, man, this is really cool. Like, none of the guys that are kind of in tribe are doing a fixed pocket blade like that.
Do you have one with you? I
do, yeah. So this is actually a slightly bigger, or this is a prototype of the Minuteman that will be, they're for sale, pre-order right now, but they'll be for sale. We'll be shipping these guys in April. Yeah. The Northman, our original one, it's slightly smaller than this right here. But it's basically, it sits in your pocket, and so you can put your hand on it and draw. Most guys look at that and they just think, man, this is a, they just see a little bit of clip and a little bit of handle. They think it's a folder. Yeah. But I can hang out with my finger or with my hand on a blade, and you don't have a clue. Yeah. So basically, I kind of asked the guys that I respect cool. if they were good with me starting a business around this, and kind of got the blessing, and it's kind of gone crazy from there. Like, the first, we sold out our first run in about 6 hours, I think. And it's interesting. Like the first run was sold almost exclusively to students. Yeah. I put out an email, hey guys, like this is what we're doing. I talked about it a little bit in classes, and then, hey, we do a Thanksgiving Day sale every year. So it's like 11 or 12 East Coast time, they go on sale. Yeah. By like 5 our time, it was, they were sold out. Wow. And then that's just, that did a couple runs of Northman, and then guys, I wanted a bigger blade. I really liked how the Northman handled, but I like carrying, I carry a belt knife as well. And I like having a 5-inch blade in the belt knife. So out of that was born the Magnus, which is
this one,
which is this guy right here.
So it's just a little bigger.
So this one's a 5-inch blade, and I carry this on my belt, and it's a little beat up right now. I was splitting some Texas oak with that the other night with some guys making a fire first. Yeah. But it's one of the things we do is we have a ferro rod in all of our sheaths right here, because it's one of the things I believe that as a man, you should be able to start a fire at all times. So having a ferro rod helps significantly with that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So we did this, and then this has been pretty good seller. Not quite as much. A lot of guys think that a 5-inch blade for everyday carry is a little bit excessive, but I wanted a 5-inch blade. Yeah. So we made a 5-inch blade first.
So the Northman is a 4?
The Northman is a 3.5-inch blade.
Okay, that's a 4.
The Minuteman's the 4, and now the Magnus is the 5.
Okay. Do they all have the flint capability?
They all have a ferro rod built into their sheaths.
Okay.
So it's been a cool, like, you know, that's just been its own separate learning curve with, you know, now we're running 2 businesses, and, you know, and now we're definitely outside of our, you know, the first like 80 dudes that ordered knives. I'm like, oh, cool, he's a student. Oh, cool, he's a student. Yeah. And now it's like most guys aren't students anymore, which is awesome. I mean, you know, it means it's broken into like bigger circles. But I think the guys, you know, they see it's a very functional tool, right? Yeah. To be able to just, okay, I've got a fixed blade knife in hand. And that was another thing that, like, initially we were looking at it as, hey, this is going to replace the cutting tool in my pocket. But anytime we do combatives training, like, we put on, you know, training pistols, training blades. So of course, if I normally carry a fixed blade knife in my pocket, we make, you know, and all of our knives come with training blades as well, just aluminum blunted training blades. And so as soon as I started actually teaching with a training blade in my pocket, I realized, man, there's a lot of times where having weapons that are not on your waistline is really, really good. I.e., dudes behind you trying to suplex you, right, at waistline. I have to create space in order to draw tools that are on my waistline. Or I can just pull out my pocket blade and thrust behind me. Yeah. Guy has a mount on you, ground and pound. I've got to bump and shrimp and create space in order to access tools on my waistline. Or I can reach into my pocket, go right fatal embrace, right into kidneys, subclavian. Like very, it's a huge force multiplier. Not to mention that, like, I can hang out with my hand on a blade, and like people don't have a clue. Yeah, you know, I mean, it's a very and you know, if you've got a lot of jackets on, you got a lot of layers on. Like sometimes in your integrated combatives, all about being able to strike and draw at the same time. So sometimes you'll miss your draw stroke on your pistol because you've got all these layers on, or because it's something you're getting pushed up against a wall or something like that. Like, there are times when it's just, if you miss that first time on your pistol, that second time you just go right to pocket blade, and it's a fast draw stroke. Because basically it's exposed. Yeah.
Is there, speaking of pistols, I know you said you carry a full blade, or a full size one, rather, talking about blades. What is your preferred carry?
I carry Glocks.
Yeah. Just 19 or 17 or?
So I'm carrying a 45 now. I started doing that last year before we did this big walk. I wanted to, because when I'm carrying a ruck, I carry appendix. The rest of the time I carry strong side or slightly forward to 3 o'clock. So I wanted something slightly shorter on the barrel length. The G45 is a 19 length slide with a 17 length grip. I shoot a 17 length grip better. I don't think you're undergunned if you shoot a 19. The new 43Xs are pretty amazing, especially if you couple it with a Shield Arms steel magazine. You've got 15 rounds flush fit in a pretty small package. You throw a dot on there and you can do some work with that thing.
Yeah. No, I mean, the 43X is what I carry with the TLR6 fucking light on it.
Yeah.
I have bought a couple of the Shield mags, but Jesus Christ, those springs are stiff.
They're a pain to load. I had a little bit of issues with them reliability wise when like the first couple of mags through, and I have not since then. Normally, like, I'm skeptical if there's any kind of break-in period like that. Yeah. But I haven't had any issues with them since, and man, that's 5 extra rounds. That, you know, more bullets is always better.
For sure. Yeah.
So I got to ask you a question. Are you running a dot yet?
No.
You got to make the switch.
Yeah, I just haven't. I haven't really ever messed with it. I mean, I've tried it a couple times, and it just seemed awkward and slower.
I felt the same way. Like for for a while. Like I was anti-dot for a while. And then I just finally had enough guys in industry that I respected that were like, no, this is like,
it's the way better
pretty
way.
Good.
Yeah. Which one do you run?
So I'm running an Acro right now. I've got one of my guys in Connecticut actually just milled a slide for me. Alpha Dog Arms, if I can give a shout out to him. Just milled a slide for me to accept a 509T. So I'm going to try that. They're both enclosed emitters, which is big for me. So they make windowed emitters like the RMRs. I live in the Pacific Northwest. It rains and snows. Yeah. If you get water in the emitter, it doesn't work anymore. I mean, we just had a bunch of guys for the night vision course I did. About half the guys were running RMRs, and it rained and snowed. Like, they don't work very well because water gets into the emitter, and then it's either you don't have anything or you get a bunch of buckshot. But like 5 dots instead of 1. The enclosed emitters don't have that problem. They also don't fog up nearly as much. So I'm going to run the 509 for a while, but it definitely, there is a learning curve that goes along with that. So what I just recommend is be deliberate in your dry fire routine. So, part of what I do every single morning is before I load up, I triple check firearms unloaded in a safe direction. I'll go through just 2 or 3 minutes of dry firing. And part of that is going to be adverse angles. So I'm drawn and shooting over my shoulder this way, drawn, shooting over my shoulder this way, ducking down underneath a table or a chair, because that's where that's where you'll lose the dot. Is when you'll after a couple days on the range, in your normal standard, hey, I'm squared up with my target, you'll hit the dot 99% of the time. It's when you do weird angles, like, hey, I got to make a shot here over my shoulder in a vehicle. Like, that's when it gets. Is
that the gangbanger angle? Is that what you call that?
Well, that's someone's trying to. That's the adverse angle. Yeah, I mean,
the 509. What brand is that?
That's the Hollow Sun. The Acro is made by Aimpoint.
The Hollow Sun.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to check into that. And the Acro by Aimpoint. In terms of battery life on either of those, are they the tritium style? They're last forever, or are they?
The Acro is not great at all. Like, I'm swapping batteries every 6 weeks or so on that guy. I like to run my dot a little bit higher than they say. They say it's a year, but like, that's the biggest complaint they get with that and the size of it. But I just bought 40 batteries when I got it. Like, you don't lose 0 when you swap batteries on it. Like, it takes 2 minutes to do. Like, to me, that's not a big deal. Like, for me, the bigger deal is if it rains and my sight doesn't work anymore.
Is the Hollow Sun?
The Hollow Sun, the battery life is supposed to be way better. I've run the Hollow Sun in like 3 different classes. I haven't broken one yet. I just mounted the second one on another 45, and I'm going to run that for the next 6 months to a year, depending on how I like it, and so I can give guys an honest assessment as to the durability of that product.
Right on.
Hollow Sun also gives you the option for a circle dot, which is really nice.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool.
It's just a bigger dot. It's a little bit more forgiving. If you do present with a slight cant in your pistol, you'll see the edge of that circle.
Yeah, that's cool. Is there a particular brand of ammo that you prefer to carry?
Black Hills Ammunition.
Yeah,
they were the standard when we were active duty, and they're still the standard now.
Yeah, no, that and Buffalo Bore, I do like Buffalo.
They make some good stuff as well, for sure.
To me, pistol carry too. I think gold dots and HSTs are nothing to sneeze at. Also, I think they're both very tried and true, reliable rounds that I like. I don't know what your take is on them, but
I honestly, I think the future of pistol rounds is going to be what guys are calling external hollow points. And they're basically, it's a shaped solid copper round, and it uses fluid dynamics to make the same size permanent wound cavity as some of the best hollow points on the market will do. And what that allows you to do, because the hollow points, once they expand, they don't penetrate nearly as well. And that's my paradigm of using tools. Projectile weapons is, I want my stuff to penetrate, because I'm thinking I'm shooting, through a car windshield, through a car door, like, potentially through part of my house. Like, I don't ever want to count on the magic bullet that incapacitates the bad guy and then stops inside of him and does not hurt the member of my family. Like, that's on me to make sure that my shooting lanes in my house are known. Where are my children? Where are they not?
Yeah.
And or if I'm around my family, like I can change the angle of the shot, right? By either taking one step one way or another, or making, you know, what people would consider, you know, historically would say, well, that's weird. Why are you doing that? Well, it's because if my family's directly behind you, I can't shoot you straight on. Like I have to come in and change the angle and shoot up through your head. Yeah. Or down through your pelvis or something like that.
So with that bullet, is that how does that differ from, say, the bonded bullet that a Spear Gold Dot is?
So the Spear ones are still hollow points. So bonded is very, very good. Like that's what we want. But they're just solid copper. They don't deform at all. So you'll get the penetration through, like if you hit that 2x4 or 2x6, like it's not starting to come apart or mushroom or do anything like that. It's still staying as is. So it's going to penetrate, because you got to think, it's not just, if you think, well, if you're always shooting someone straight on, like you don't need a whole lot of penetration. But what if the guy is angling away from you like this, which people are, and now you have to be able to penetrate through part of their wrist, their elbow, you know, maybe it exits, you know, through part of their humeral, and then it's into their thoracic cavity. No, so there's penetration. Yeah, is a good thing.
Sure, that's what she said. It's always a good thing. I do want to transition a little bit into just talking about the way that you live again, because it's fascinating and what have you. Can you kind of synopsize the big picture view?
Yeah, so we live on a farm in North Idaho. We run sheep, some dairy goats, a bunch of chickens, a couple dogs. Seasonally, we run pigs. Back in Virginia, we ran pigs, like a boar and a couple sows, and they will eat you out of house and home. Like we don't do that anymore. We get feeder pigs every year and just raise them for ourselves and friends, and then eat them.
You grow a lot of your own vegetables?
We do some. I would say we're better at raising livestock than we are at growing stuff, and in part that's because, you know, I'm on the road a lot, and my wife has been pregnant and nursing the majority of the time we've been married. So
how many kids do you guys have?
We have 6 kids and another one on the way.
Holy shit. And what's the age range?
13, 11, 9, 7, 5, and 2.5.
Wow. And boy, girl breakdown?
Girl, the rest are boys.
No shit. Yeah. That's very unlike most team guys.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Man, that's cool. You got a whole fucking fire team of your own, huh?
They're awesome. Yeah, for sure.
They're almost a squad now.
It's fun.
That's really cool. Is there a thought process behind? I mean, I know, you know, typically nowadays, contrasted to say 100 years ago, people have far fewer kids. Is that, like, when you guys got married, did you decide, hey, we want to have a bunch of kids, or we want to have this many, or we're just gonna we'll have how many we have?
We said 7 going into it.
Yeah.
I really look at it as their blessing.
Yeah.
And I enjoy. I mean, it is chaos in our house a lot. You know, I mean, there's 5 boys running around screaming and, you know, wrestling each other, and you know, and then a daughter and a piano in the mix now too. Like, I mean, there's a lot of chaos, but it's also, it's cool. You know, the kids are playing together all the time. We just really enjoy it.
Yeah. Do you homeschool?
We do. Yeah.
In terms of kind of where you live, you know, I'm assuming if it's on a farm, it's not really a neighborhood, like, you know, nearest town and kind of the involvement community wise, and you know, what involvement you have, or what role they play that way. How does that kind of shake out?
Yeah, super involved with our community, you know, and our church. I mean, we're part of a homeschool program called Classical Conversations, which is a nationwide program. They meet once a week. They do public speaking. They do, you know, it's a pretty cool program. So they're, you know, the kind of the arguments against the concerns that people have about homeschooling. Oh, your kid's not gonna get socialized. And first off, what does socialized mean? Does it mean they dress and act like everyone else? If that's the case, I don't care. Yeah. Like, because I don't want my kids acting like most people are acting these days.
Yeah.
And 2, my kids are around people all the time.
Yeah.
They're absolutely getting socialized. You know, I mean, in our community, the majority of the people homeschool. So it's just like, but we're still like, you know, they're going over and playing at other people's houses, or we're going over to help someone throw up a barn or build their house or whatever, and like all the kids will go over and help. And so there's it's a pretty, I feel very blessed with the community that we ended up in, because it's really good.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. In terms of groceries, how you eat, etc., is there an emphasis put on like whole foods, organic, nutrient dense? Do you do a lot of grocery shopping, or does most of what you come from your own?
We still buy a lot of groceries. I mean, that's I think the more you're like trying to homestead, the more you realize, man, it's pretty tough to do, especially if you're not, the vegetable garden. If we did better at it, we could grow more stuff.
I suppose where you're at, you'd have to have a greenhouse to have any type of chance
for consistency, for sure. I mean, we'll get frost sometimes every month of the year. So there's some stuff that we can absolutely grow and have grown. But then there's also some stuff that's like, it's been challenging to try and grow. But yeah, we do put a heavy emphasis on eating organic food and, cutting out refined sugars and stuff like that. Yeah. Probably the thing that we try and follow the most would probably be like the Nourishing Traditions cookbook.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with it.
Eat real food, basically. Yeah. Eat real food that's grass fed and
finished properly.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's one thing that nutrition-wise, so few people understand, like a lot of the anti-meat campaigns and showing like this, air quotes, empirical data of like health impacts of eating meat. What they're not reconciling is the type of meat they're eating. Like if you're eating unhealthy animals, then it's going to make you unhealthy. Yeah. On the transverse, if you're eating healthy animals, it's the opposite. And that's why where I have a lot of heartburn with a lot of these, like, what was that? It was either Netflix or Amazon. There was some game changer documentary about veganism and how it's, the end all be all, and meat is fucking terrible and whatever. And it's just pretty disingenuous. But
I agree. I mean, and our critters live amazing lives. Yeah. I mean, like they, lush green pasture and.
Well, I mean, even taking the animal morality or cruelty, whatever you want to coin it as, element out of it. The fact is that just purely environmentally, there is not a solution. If you were to say, just like with having all electric cars isn't realistic in terms of the amount of power it would take to power those cars, there's not enough vegetable matter on the planet to be able to have everybody eat that way. And I also think, I know, and this isn't, I'm not anti-vegan. I'm 100% like do what you want to do, but when it gets brought into from an emotional standpoint where you're essentially attacked if you're not that way, then I have a big fucking problem with that, and basically saying like you're a murderer and you hate the environment if you eat meat. And it's like, how about I punch you in the fucking nose first? Like,
well, what's better environmentally, like a nice pasture?
Yeah.
Or a Monsanto cornfield or bean patch. Like,
no, I mean, and again, I mean, like I said, to each their own. Like I'm not, I don't have heartburn with vegetarians or vegans or what have you, but I do when they make it personal and start attacking you for the way you want to live your life. That shit drives me nuts. And especially when it's justified or they try to justify it by saying it's way better for the environment or blah blah blah. And I just disagree. But at any rate, I am curious in terms of the off-grid. Is it a principle thing or what?
Honestly, it was there's in part it was an independence type thing. Like it's nice to we do have frequent power outages. Pretty much, we'll get a couple storms in the wintertime, especially like first couple storms of the season, big, heavy, wet snow. Like I think this year we had about 3 days of power outage, consecutive. So there's that. It makes it nice that it doesn't matter. Yeah. But then there also was a financial component to it. Like it was when we built our house, it was going to cost a significant amount of money to bring power up there. Like we have power on our property, which is nice for like the shop, so I can run a welder and all that kind of stuff. But
it's just all
to move up to the house site to pull power up there was going to cost more money than it was going to cost to put an off-grid system.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a no-brainer. And we built our house with very, with off-grid in mind, i.e. it's ICF construction. So it's very, very
efficient,
thermally efficient. We heat with wood, which the house stays nice and warm with one wood burner in there right now. And I just like the lifestyle of it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's cool. Like I make a fire every morning, every night, like sit down and, on my couch in front of the fire. Like it's peaceful.
Yeah.
There's heat security, right? When it gets really cold outside and I got 4 or 5 cords of wood next to the house, a little ways away from the house, like there's a huge, like, so I'm on the road, and even back when, before we moved into our house, we were in a trailer, and it's like, I wasn't too worried when the power went out, because I know we had some water put away, and my wife is very industrious. She's cooked bread inside of a normal wood stove, not like a wood cook stove. Yeah. Like she's made soup on top of the stove, like so it's very, like there's a lot of benefit that goes with that. We use propane for, we got an on-demand hot water heater that uses propane, so it also uses very, very little energy. Our dryer uses propane, so it also doesn't use a whole lot of power. We had a propane fridge for a while when it was still before we got the battery bank and all that stuff, and it was just, well, we can run a generator and run our electrical stuff, and then we don't want the generator running 24/7, so we turned that off, and then we wouldn't have power to the house. But your fridge needs to run still. So we had a propane powered fridge for a while.
Yeah,
and then we got then we went through and we got an inverter, we had a charge controller, we got a bunch of 6-volt batteries, so we got a 48-volt system. They're 390 amp hours. They're all wired in series. This is another thing, like if you're going to get into off-grid stuff, like you could pay someone to come in there and do that, but there's so much, like you almost can't just be an end user. Like you have to understand what's going on.
Yeah.
You got to understand. Yeah. Because you're going to be troubleshooting the thing sometimes. Yeah. So, I installed all this stuff myself. The people that we bought from they were great about, like, I call them up, hey, what about this? What do I do now? What do I do now? And very helpful with that.
Do you guys have solar panels?
Yeah. So we got panels as well. We got 4 370 watt panels, pairs of 2 wired in series. So when the sun's shining, we'll charge at about 16, 17 amps, which is just a little bit under what a 3,500 watt generator, when it's doing its normal thing off of, when we're plugged into the generator and we're charging about 20, 21 amps off of that 3,500 watt generator.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit less. I'm going to try and get one more set of panels. I didn't get them up initially because they don't fit on my power shack. Because the batteries, when they're charging, they off gas, I believe it's hydrogen gas. It's something that's flammable and not good for you. And having had a house fire back in Virginia, I'm I want all that electrical stuff out of my house. So we actually built a separate, like, kind of mechanical shack away from the house. So we've got a generator inside of one section of it. We've got the batteries and all the clean stuff in another, and then we've got all the plumbing stuff, pressure tank and all that stuff in another one.
Oh, that's cool.
So yeah, it's been a pretty cool, like, discovery, like learning how to do all this stuff, and then kind of seeing, okay, how do we manage it, and like, what's the best? Okay, get up in the morning, turn the generator on for an hour or 2, and then, if the sun starts cranking, then we should turn the generator off and you're good. And like, my wife can do laundry, she can do all that stuff. If the sun's shining, she can do that stuff. Maybe not run everything in the house at the same time.
Yeah.
Like the big 3 are going to be washer, dryer, and the dishwasher. Yeah. Those are like your biggest draws right there. Oh, and then my coffee, my espresso machine, that 1,000 watt draw right there. Like pretty much I gotta shut some other stuff off before I use that.
Turn the house off so I can have coffee. That's good stuff. As far as the involvement that you take with your kids, getting involved in all that kind of stuff, I mean, having that many kids at that ages, I'm sure they're probably getting to be a big help with a lot of that stuff, right?
Hugely. Yeah, they do.
And I'm assuming a lot of it is teaching them all of the same things. And
yeah, a lot of the chores are done by the children. Like, if there's something that needs to be done around the farm, hey, boys, come on, let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go do it.
Yeah.
That way they learn by seeing me do it and do it. But then that's also like cool stuff. Like, hey, we're going snowmobiling now.
Yeah.
like this is what we do.
Watch out for the barbed wire.
Or hey, we're going skiing. Like we ski. Skiing's important to me. Like, so my top 5 kids are all skiing blacks now.
Yeah. Wow,
my top 2 are skiing double blacks. Like some challenging double blacks.
Yeah.
Like I'm like that. That makes me happy.
Yeah.
Like I love doing that.
Do you incorporate a lot of the shooting and knife and combatives with the boys as well, or with all of them?
Yeah. we do.
Is that something where it's like, if you want to do it, I'll show you, or hey, it's time to learn, get over here?
Both.
Yeah.
There's like I'm not going to force my kids to wrestle. I've been fortunate. I've encouraged them, and they've wrestled most of the seasons. The COVID this year, they didn't have a season. So that's been awesome to watch them wrestle, but like I'm not going to force them to wrestle. But there's a level, if you're a man, like you need to be able to protect your family. Like that is part of your responsibility as a man, is to be able to protect yourself and your family. Mm-hmm. So therefore you need to learn a certain level. You need to get to a baseline level of capability. You don't have to be amazing at it. You don't have to love it, but you do have to be proficient at it.
Yeah.
So there's that, and that's kind of the way I explain it to him. Like, come on, let's go train right now. Like we're gonna learn how to do skip knees. Just finally got a banana bag up. We've got a wrestling room in our house.
Yeah.
Finally got the banana bag hug. So it's like skip knees, boys. Let's learn them. Like elbows. Let's learn them.
Yeah, that's good shit. Yeah, that's cool. Well, I could sit here and pepper you with questions about how you live for the rest of the day, but I know we're both on a bit of a timeline. Fascinating stuff. Amazing career that you've had. I wish you could share more of it. I get that, the position that you're in, coming from where you came from, skimps on some of the details a lot of people want to hear, but it is what it is. Anything that you want to add before we close it out here?
Just say, hey, thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
It's been good conversation.
Yeah, no, great having you on. I appreciate you taking the time out, sticking around long enough to be able to jump on, and I appreciate you doing it. So, As always, we'll have how to get in touch with him in the show notes and links there on YouTube, as well as when we post on social media when the episode comes out, which should be just in a few days. But if you could just reiterate your website again.
So you can find us. So Bill Rapier, you can find us at AMTACshooting.com or AMTACBlades.com. And then also follow us on Instagram, also AMTAC Blades, AMTAC Shooting, and Facebook.
Okay, kick ass. All right, there you have it, folks. Bill is kind of a consummate warrior, in my opinion. To me, I'm very impressed by the way that you live, and just kind of the principled nature with which you guide your entire life. I think it's such a rarity nowadays that to come across it is really refreshing and just really neat to see. So keep it up. Not that you need my fucking approval, but I think it's awesome, and it's been great sharing the few hours with you. So I recently came across a hot sauce brand that, while I didn't used to really be a hot sauce guy, as I've gotten older, I've gotten more into having them and enjoying them. But I don't like just that traditional, it's just hot sauce that a lot of kind of the big traditional brands are that are on every table out there. Heartbeat Hot Sauce it's a small kind of boutique brand up in Canada, of all places, that makes a bunch of different hot sauces that like flavor profile wise fit with a lot of different things. I mean, whether it's eggs scrambled or fried in the morning, or even like chicken or fish or beef. Kind of some of the non-traditional foods that you would normally eat, that I eat a lot of, and in the interest of trying to eat things that are cleaner, more grass-fed, and frankly just not quite as flavorful as some of the other stuff, I've kind of turned to hot sauces to amp it up a little bit. And this brand I've really taken a liking to. What I like primarily about them is they don't use any thickening agents or water like most hot sauces do. It's all natural ingredients with no preservatives. It's all locally grown stuff in all of their sauces. They ferment the peppers for, I think, 45 days before being aged or before made, for that maximum flavor. So it really kind of enhances it. And they're just really balanced. One of the kind of unique things about them too, if you saw the weigh-in between Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier, Dustin handed Conor a bottle of hot sauce, and it's his version or blend of hot sauce from this company, Heartbeat Hot Sauce. So they've got a bunch of really good flavors, again, that I put on a lot of different things, and really, really like their product, and reached out to them in terms of partnering with the show, because it's one of those products that I believe in, just like all of our other sponsors. So if you dig hot sauce, whether it's pineapple flavored or traditional habanero, or Dustin's Louisiana style, they kind of have a flavor for everybody. So really good stuff, awesome company, great dude behind the company, and just a really cool experience in working with those guys. So go check them out. They do have a promo code. It's just Mic Drop, all caps, 2 words, for any listeners, to get 20% off all of their sauces, and that's good for 6 months. So again, Mic Drop, 2 words, all caps, 20% off, and that's good for a full 6 months. So you go check them out. I'd like to take a quick second to shout out and thank our sponsor for today's podcast, Origin Labs and Jocko Fuel. Jocko Fuel is a great product. He's got a ton of products actually within the Jocko Fuel line. The guests and I enjoy them on the show. And outside, I take a lot of the supplements. I've got some of the Origin Lab jeans, boots, gis, and it's just all around American industry. They do a fantastic job really re-revolutionizing American industry from start to finish. It's all American made, all American sourced. Everything start to finish is made right there in-house. And they really do a phenomenal job creating the products and fulfilling the whole ball of wax. They've been a huge supporter of the Mic Drop podcast for a while now, and I really can't thank Jocko Fuel and Origin Labs enough for the job that they do for us, and so thank you to you guys. I'd like to take a second to shout out our newest sponsor, which is Project Warpath. This is a Navy SEAL-owned company that provides apparel with a pretty edgy feel, and it's a good friend of mine that runs it out of California. And just overall a great outfit. They've got a whole line of different shirts, one of which is arguably my favorite, which is Epstein Didn't Kill Himself. Wonder where that one came from. And but yeah, there's Hillary Clinton Killed My Friends. There's a bunch of pretty edgy and cool patriotic sayings on T-shirts with good design, good high quality, and it's one that I'm actually wearing right now. So I appreciate them sponsoring the show. Again, that's Project Warpath. You can get all their stuff online, and the shipping and customer service is top notch, quality product, and you're supporting a veteran-owned business. So shout out to Project Warpath. Go check their stuff out. I'd also like to say thank you to our other sponsor, Resilience Premium CBD. Resilience is excited to offer all Mic Drop listeners a 20% off discount on all products for 2 weeks from when this podcast is live, using the discount code MICDROP at checkout. That's 2 words, MICDROP at checkout. I'd also like to say that Resilience is a great company that works in conjunction with Trico CBD, and all military veterans and first responders receive 35% off. Yes, that's 35% off for all military veterans and first responders, and that's through the Military and First Responders Program. You just have to sign up at resilientcbd.com/military first responders discount. In terms of about Resilience, generally speaking, it's a premium CBD that I use. Again, it works in conjunction with the Tricos brand for the everyday athlete. That's www.resilientcbd.com. And Resilience was really born with the founders who are military veterans as well, personally experienced the effects and impact that CBD had on their own mental and physical obstacles. Their focus was sharper, mental stress was calmed, fitness stamina increased, and their bodies felt less pain, inflammation after super intense workouts. A lot of times most people and people are able to either wean off entirely or significantly reduce pain management therapy. This is a shared vision among the founders that this incredible supplement had not only changed their lives, but had the power to provide unbelievable benefits to family, friends, athletes, fellow veterans, and ultimately the entire fitness community. So big shout out to Resilience for their product as well as the Trico stuff. We sure appreciate their support. On that, ladies and gentlemen, go ahead and choke yourself. Feel free to drop some comments in the comment box, especially on YouTube. I like to get in there and interact with you guys sometimes, so do that. And as always, I just want to take a minute to say thank you to the listeners for continuing to show us the love that keeps this show going, because without you guys, it wouldn't happen. So we appreciate all the support from the bottom of my heart. I really do. It's amazing to have your guys' ear for these long form podcasts that so few people really have the time or desire to sit through. So until next time, this is Mic Drop.